Be strong.
Everything was quiet on the street. A veteran hero was looking to get some R&R after a long day's work. Everyone in the bar was patiently waiting for the broadcast to begin. The veteran was a regular of this establishment. He wasn't as profitable today as others, but work is work. He had arrived just in time for the important event that was being broadcast around the world. The Commonwealth was voting on whether or not to punish the world's most famous hero. The voting was over. All that was left was for it to be announced. 325 votes in favor, 0 votes against, and 0 abstained. The decision was unanimous. The Parliament President addressed the accused. Code name Mask, the evidence is clear of your atrocities against humanity. You are responsible for multiple massacres during the war and for overseeing the wrongful imprisonment and execution of over 30,000 people in the purge of the upper ranks of our Commonwealth. At the same time, you also attacked friendly people from other countries and destroyed trade relations between the two nations, as well as causing a vicious food shortage in the northern region of our Commonwealth. And due to the above crimes, the Supreme Council should have sentenced you to death. But as it turns out, even with such crimes, this hero was useful to this world. So, the people in power wanted to make sure this asset would continue to be available to mankind, just in case another alien invasion were to happen. They restricted him from only obtaining 2 roles in their society: the Supreme Leader and the Supreme Marshal of the Commonwealth. He would retain his current title as Special Hero, the only one in existence. But they placed unreasonable burdens upon him. If their world was ever threatened, he would immediately return to the battlefield and fight for their survival. The scene shifts back to the bar, where conversations highlighted the stark contrast of public opinions circulating about the heroic figure known as Mask. On one hand, you have the older individuals who understand the reality of the world. They knew that if it wasn't for the special hero, codenamed Mask, no one on this planet would be here to have such a conversation. But because of this special hero's actions of raising other heroes around him up, the world was a safer place. And some individuals felt that the special hero was no longer needed for the survival of mankind. But it seems the ones who gained power because of this hero's actions had brainwashed the younger populace to see things differently. The credit for survival of the world belonged to everyone on it. Not one man's actions alone could be seen as the reason why humanity survived. But a part of the populace knew that the ordinary people of this world had given up hope of survival, and the heroes with extraordinary powers had failed against the invasion. But a long man stood his ground on the day that was known as Hell, and he alone stepped forward from that day victorious. But some in this world resented him for not moving beyond the horrors of the past, for he believed that they had only experienced the first wave of an invasion, and the future of mankind was still in jeopardy. And the worst part? He implied that some of the world's greatest heroes were in bed with the unnameable secret force that was out to destroy mankind. But you can't blame these individuals. They all just wanted to live in peace and move beyond the dark times. And at the same time, a part of the world's populace understood and believed in the special hero. They knew that mankind's survival was only a fluke and that they had to be ready for the day when the real enemies arrived. Back in the halls of the Commonwealth, Special Hero codenamed Mask was given a choice. He could retain his honor bestowed upon him by mankind, for the world was grateful for his actions at that time. He should be thankful to mankind for doing this for him, because after all, he was still a criminal. But the hero came to his senses. What was going on? Why was he here? He knew he had died from the sneak attack from the Lord of the Woven Night. Was this a flashback to his previous life? He had been in the same place, being judged and betrayed by his companions, when an unknown force gave him a choice to become a hero. This couldn't be. Was he being given a second chance? A system popped up informing him of his options. He had completed his original mission to rebuild humanity and form an alliance which would have the power to defend against any existential crisis that humanity may face. He was given 2 branches to choose from: The mission rewards he would receive would be issued depending upon his choice. Branch 1. The Hero's Path. A new crisis has appeared, although humans cannot understand your behavior. But as a hero, you still choose to protect mankind in the dark. Branch 2. The Monster's Path. A new crisis has appeared. Stupid human beings cannot understand your behavior. But saving mankind has nothing to do with humanity. And since human beings would kill the hero, then repenting in darkness is the actions of a bloodless and useless monster. The system informs him that in 20 minutes he'd be randomly sent to an F-level environment. Who would have thought that I'd be reborn again? And once again stand at the crossroads of this historical turnaround. This time, I'll choose the monster's path. The Parliament President was growing annoyed at the silence of the hero. He understood that the special hero was an incomprehensible existence in this world, that he had zero emotional or political wisdom. Even in such a situation, he ignored the thoughts and feelings of the people of the world. He mentally admitted that the Commonwealth had actively worked towards ruining the special hero's prestige in the eyes of society, leading to the understanding that he was just a relic from the past that was best buried and forgotten. He was just a burden that was holding mankind back from a better future. The whole point of this trial was to exile him in every way from society. From this day forward, he will become a harmless reminder of days gone by. And if the hero disagreed, it would prove his point that he was a relic hell-bent on holding power for his sake alone. All the members of Congress knew that he had fell into their carefully orchestrated trap. The hero decided it was time to move past this and start his new life. I have an objection. The crowd, which only a second ago was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, burst out in conversation. The president was ready for this. The people watching at home knew this was going to be the outcome. No way would that psychopath give up power and allow the rest of us to move on. The world has sacrificed so much for him. It was time they hung him for his crimes. The world watched as their savior gave up his title of special hero. Everyone was shocked. This is not what he was supposed to do. What did you say? I said I give up my title of being a special hero. The hero was tired of protecting mankind and being blamed for all his efforts. The president of the parliament raged on, but none of it really mattered to the hero. As he walked away, he explained that he had no problem with their decision. He was more relaxed than he had ever been. This was not in the president's calculations. As the silent hero that supported mankind, he was supposed to just bend his knee and accept this punishment. He was worried that the hero would become their greatest enemy. He had to act fast. He had a plan to use the attention of the world to force the hero to relinquish his power. Since the hero had relinquished his title, that power belonged to the world. Back in the bar, the viewers were intrigued by the sudden change of events. The ones that understood what was going on explained the situation to the others. They wonder how this was even possible, as the hero was the highest rank in the world. How could the president force someone who was 4 ranks higher than his current rank of 9 to do anything against their will? No one on this planet was above the 10th rank, and no one believed that would ever change, even in the future. The president explained that the mask was where he was because the people of this world poured their resources into him. No way could he just walk away with the heart and soul of the world. That would be a disgrace to everyone alive. So, in order for him to leave, he would need to give up the power that didn't belong to him. Power radiated from the savior's body, putting everyone around the world on edge. But surprisingly, the hero agreed to give it all up. He raised his arm to the air and released his energy, forcing everyone in the room to bow down to it. The ones not strong enough to withstand such a power begged for help. It took all of the energy of the rank 9 president to keep from being forced down by such a powerful force. If the people in charge of this world wanted his power, then he would give it all back to them. The power radiated from his hand, shot straight into the air, burst into the ceiling and out into the open sky. People who wasn't watching the broadcast was shocked by what they saw. Some believed another king-class monster had descended to this planet. The savior was so powerful that the beam of energy shot to the heavens. Lightning sparked across the whole city. There was a high chance that majority of Parliament would perish before all of his power had been depleted. Slowly, the blue beam began to flicker out, becoming a trickle of its once great force. The president exerted all of his energy to endure the 10 minutes it took for the excruciating power to cease. But now he was the strongest person in the room. The once great hero was now nothing more than an ordinary human. All the fear he once felt had evaporated, and a malicious smile crossed his lips. The hero had no problem with his actions. His power did not define him. He turned around and continued his journey towards his new life. He flicked his mask over his shoulder as he went. The president thought to himself that the day would soon come that the hero would no longer walk this earth. The hero disappeared from sight as he passed through the doors of the Parliament building. The president was in shock. There was no way he could teleport after releasing all of his power. Random teleportation has been activated. Choose a level 4 secret realm. Mother Spider Hatchling's Nest. The portal cast a blue hue on the walls of the secret room. The steel-cutting squad stepped through as their boss explained their goal for today. All of their members were above level 2, meaning they would have no problem easily dispatching the trash mobs. The final boss was level 3. Together, they would be able to take it down. The leader wondered if any of his members were afraid of spiders as he looked towards the 2 women in his group. They were not pleased with him looking down on them. The other members were ready to get underway and wanted their captain to stop messing around. The sooner they got out of here, the sooner they would find out the outcome of the trial for the great hero codenamed Mask. They were taking advantage of the situation, as this secret realm was only available because everyone was intrigued by what was happening in the real world. They had played around enough. It was time to get serious. We must work together and raid the whole secret realm as quickly as possible. Yes, Captain! They all looked back as someone stepped through the portal. A hero on a new journey in life stepped forward. The group knew there was something off about this individual. Who would enter a secret realm without any equipment? Our protagonist was experiencing things that he hadn't experienced in a lifetime. He had forgotten what it was like to enter a low-level secret realm. The feeling of nostalgia radiated from him. He hadn't been to this place since he had originally awakened, all those years ago. He was used to secret realms on a whole nother level, where if you didn't defeat them in time, it would transform into a realm where everlasting demons would appear. These places were so dangerous, normal monsters were afraid to enter them. If you were lucky to survive long enough for the boss to appear, you would be facing an unnameable demon god. The system had decided to send him here after he relinquished all his power and de-leveled back to level 1. Human status: normal. Alignment: none. Monster status: undecided. Monster component: none. He wasn't sure if this choice was wise, but he knew that in his last life the path of the hero was a waste of time. He wasn't sure if it was okay for him to be looking forward to becoming a cold-blooded monster. The group leader approached him, being as gentle as he possibly could, inquiring why he was weaponless. But the protagonist explained that his fist was the only weapon he needed. The captain patted him on the arm, believing him to be a martial artist. But he wasn't totally persuaded by this. He wanted to know what level of professional he was. For someone to come to a secret realm looking so confident, this individual had to be at the same level as me. The captain was worried that if that were the case, he would take a significant portion of their loot. But they were all shocked when the words level 1 left the lips of the young man standing before them. You can't be joking, little brother. Being here, as a level 1 professional can only mean your death. The captain was relieved on the inside. He was scared. They were going to lose a lot of money today. The protagonist slipped out of the grip of the captain, saying aloud that he was here to crush monsters. The people around him felt sorry for the young man. There was no way he would even be able to beat their level 2 healer, let alone crush monsters. Thinking of his safety, they advised him to stay in this room. When they were done with the secret realm, he would be able to leave here safely. He tried to reassure them that he wouldn't bring any trouble to them. The leader warned him that since he was the one here looking for trouble, that he shouldn't expect them to save his life when danger met him face to face. As they headed out, their youngest female glanced back, not pleased with how her group had handled this interaction. The group battled their way to the spider cave. The older females shot deadly fireballs at the spiders, while the archer was a crack shot, capable of covering the back of his captain from afar. The lancer and the captain fought at close combat, as if they had been fighting together for years. As the former hero stood back and watched them work, the group's healer approached and apologized for the actions of her group. She really wanted this stranger to know that the captain was a good guy, and he was only looking out for his best interest. She wanted to make sure he understood that if he wasn't careful, this place would consume him. He explained that things were so much different nowadays than back when he raided. People were so much more progressive and cautious. He guessed the lessons that were learned in blood by his generation had passed down to the younger generation. She was surprised that he talked just like those uppity people in the Commonwealth. But she agreed with him that the policies that the hero mask had put into place was for the betterment of all mankind. His actions had strengthened the training of the professionals and had fostered a cooperation among them that was for all of their betterment. The death rate had really plummeted because of the hero's action, which allowed the population of professionals to expand among the human race. The young healer had got lost in their conversation and had forgotten to introduce herself. Her name was Yensici, and she was a level 2 healer. Nice to meet you. I'm Xiao Qiu, a level 1 professional. I have yet to select my career path. She was shocked by his admission. He explained that he was still thinking it over. In his past life, he was the one who created all of the paths that human beings followed. But all of his choices going forward was still a mystery. She went over his possibilities out loud. She knew most definitely with his physique that he would never be cut out for close-range DPS. She believed he should focus in the area of spellcasting. When he gave her an unnerving glare, she realized that maybe she was being a little too talkative for a stranger. He grabbed her by her arm, moving her out of the incoming path of a monster attack. Her teammates would never make it there in time. So, Xiao ripped the leg off of the spider and used it to stab it through the eye all in one fluid motion. The spider collapsed to the ground as the healer Yen held on to his body. The others were shocked at what a martial artist was capable of. But the lancer explained he had never seen a martial artist do such things. He just crushed the spider's most vulnerable point, and in one fluid motion pushed it through its eye socket. Only someone who clearly understood a monster structure and had a great understanding of their own body was capable of that. The danger has passed. It's okay for you to let me go. She was totally embarrassed as she backed away from him. He was relieved to find out that choosing the monster's path was very similar to the hero's path. That one kill had gained him 500 experience points. He knew now he would be able to level up easily by killing monsters. In his past life, this was the reason why he became such a high-level professional. With the fighting experience he gained in his last life, he would be able to get there even faster this time. The captain apologized for misjudging Xiao. He extended his gratitude for saving Yan's life, and offered him an equal cut of their spoils upon completion of their current mission. Xiao explained there was no need for such a gesture. It was only right to help each other out in the secret realms. The captain knew Xiao was putting him in his place on purpose. As the group moved forward, everyone fought together to complete the mission. In no time they had reached the boss, and their plan would remain the same. The captain would be the tank. The mage had the responsibility of making sure to burn away the spider webs throughout the battle. The rest would be basic damage dealers. The group had progressed so fast that if they were lucky, they would make it in time for the end of the trial. The lancer could care less about the end. He knew the outcome. That hypocrite of a mask would be found guilty. I'm just curious what he looks like. No one had any idea who the mask truly was. The group continued to chit-chat about the mask until they upset Yen the healer. She was totally in the mask's corner, and knew intimately the incident that everyone called the massacre of the mask. She knew the mask had done the best he could in the circumstances he was put in. The Lancer teased her. "Are you sure you're not one of those paid actors that you see on the internet?" Their captain insisted that they were embarrassing themselves in front of company. They all turned towards the challenge at hand. The environment was covered in spider webs. Some of the group was more interested in valuable goods, while others were interested in the treasure chest that was left behind. "Prepare yourself, here comes the boss." The spider let out a screech of anger as the captain rushed in to gain aggro. Their blows clashed as the other damage dealers searched for openings. Xiao was surprised at how unintelligent the boss at this level was. With any luck, he would end this soon. The mage kept the spider webs under control while the archer guarded her. The healer was keeping the captain alive, with all she had. The boss stood no chance against their teamwork, dying in short order. Everyone will get their equal cut of the rewards. Minus little brother Zhao's cut. Xiao didn't understand why they kept referring to this place as a level 3 secret realm, when his system clearly stated it was a level 4 secret realm. The group realized that something was off. The treasure chest had not appeared. A mysterious figure approached them from the darkest corner of the cavern. A girl, wearing a school uniform. Her head was covered in an astronaut's helmet. The real boss had shown her face. She gave off no signs of being worth any of their time, so the Lancer decided to end this quickly. The possessed astronaut girl stumbled forward, her toes gripping the ground as she ran. The Lancer readied himself. No one believed that such a direct attack would land. As soon as she was in range, he stabbed her through. Her pink fluids spread all over the place. His lance pierced through to the other side. Everyone was impressed by the sight. And with that, he went in for a killing blow. But to his surprise, spider webs emerged from the hole he left in her torso. They shot out, binding his arms. As he struggled to free himself, without batting her eyes, she snapped his arms. There was no way they would be able to cut that silk. The captain ordered the mage to burn it away, and the archer sprinted forward to rescue his teammate from the flames. But as he got closer, the flames raged out of control. It was as if the boss was stoking the flames. As the flames cleared, all their eyes met a horrifying sight. The astronaut girl had gone from 2 legs to an 8-legged freak. Xiao was the only one among them where shock wasn't the prominent feature on their face. The Lancer turned, desperately trying to escape. But he was severely impeded by the silk wrapped around his body. With barely any effort, the 8-legged freak stuck her pretty foot through his chest. The Lancer stood there, looking down at the foot, knowing his life was over. The archer was infuriated, but Xiao grabbed his forearm to calm him down. "Don't act rashly. If you go after such a beast, you will be next." As the archer turned to give Xiao a piece of his mind, his captain explained the wisdom in the words that was just told to him. They had pushed so fast towards the boss that they had a full 3 hours before they could escape. The new plan was to make a tactical retreat. They would fight the boss while slowly making their way back to the entrance. Then they would escape immediately once the portal opened. The 8-legged freak decided to go on the offensive. This time, the captain was her target. Her silk shot from her exposed wound and wrapped around his forearm. The archer instantly released a volley of arrows. But in a second she had him completely wrapped up and defenseless. The captive captain screamed his name as the archer was sucked towards the freak. As he got closer, teeth emerged, and the hole grew wider. It was a horrible sight. The monster ate his head off and dropped the body to the ground. This sent the captain into a rage. He charged up and took a swing towards the freak of a boss. She countered his blow with nothing more than one of her legs. The captain was confused. There was no way a level 4 monster was able to counter a level 3 swordsman's attack. As the spider reeled him in, the main protagonist Xiao came towards the captain offering his help. "Give me your sword. The only way to live now is if I cut off your arm. If you want to live, give me your sword." It only took the captain a split second to accept this decision. He flung his sword up to Xiao, who came down with a strike that removed the captain's arm up to the elbow. The pain was excruciating, but he would live. The two retreated to safety. As the healer Yen rushed in to seal the wound, the mage chose this time to lose her mind. She ran away in a panic, screaming, "I don't want to die in a place like this." Yen asked Xiao why wasn't he running away also. "Run. You can't run away." She let her go on purpose. The thrill of the chase was like candy to a boss like that, who was best known as God Chosen. God Chosen feed on the negative emotions of humans. Delicacies such as fear, jealousy, resentment were treats like no other to such a boss. Yen was confused by the words coming out of Xiao's mouth. God Chosen were monsters chosen by the outer gods of the void. If a monster was chosen, they would gain terrifying growth, speed and power, and have an appearance that was bizarre to the eyes of a human. God Chosen were nothing special to Xiao. He had killed them countless times. Heck, the first ever secret realm he entered when he had little to no power was assigned a God Chosen monster. For some reason, fate had bad taste when it came to him. The eighth-legged freak began to release a purple miasma into the air. The healer cast a poison-repelling spell on the group. The mage was instantly taken over by the miasma. Yen realized that the purple haze was spiritual energy, not poisonous gas. This was the perfect opportunity for Xiao. Now that everyone was unconscious, he could reveal his true power. The boss freak was surprised when something that was supposed to be her food appeared out of nowhere next to her. While he had forfeited all his power, his spirit and soul were still level 14. The boss freak's spiritual presence came nowhere near his. The pink miasma triggered the system to give Xiao a new ability. He let the spider know that thanks to her attack knocking out the normal humans, he was able to use his ability and fight her on even terms. A mere God-chosen being should feel proud to witness his existence. As the freak attempted to soak in her spiritual presence, the monster once known as the special hero blasted towards the freak, slicing off one of her legs as he went. Other than being long, this really is a good leg. She attempted to capture him by sending silk in all directions. But such a simple move didn't have a chance of landing on him. Xiao realized that maybe his expectations for this God-chosen was too high. She was only level 4 after all. But that wasn't his problem, so he continued his attack. He sprinted down the wall, and as he reached her, he laid a barrage upon her that removed all of her legs except for one. As he tossed all her legs away, he decided it was time to finish this. "It looks like you only have one leg left. So, let's get this over with." As she attempted to hobble away, he decided to relieve her of that luxury. With no legs at her disposal, she did her best to crawl away. Her hand stopped in mid-motion as the monster stepped in front of her. "When you were playing with humans, you didn't think it would be your turn so soon, did you?" He put his foot through her head, wrapping up this pathetic fight. Level 4 Secret Realm. Mother Spider Hatcher Nest. Raid complete. Mission reward issue. Spider's foot. Should be a spider's leg. Survivors will be automatically transported out of the secret room. People went about their normal hustle and bustle, the kind you would expect from a large metropolitan city. Yen walked around in a stupor. It had been over 2 hours since she had been teleported out of that held trap of a secret realm. Their captain had been rushed to the hospital. Her and the mage were able to leave on their own volition. She had no idea if Xiao Qiu had made it out alive. But as soon as she thought it, he was standing there right in front of her. After his victory, Xiao had been teleported to Day's city. He currently had a major problem. He was so powerful in his last life that money wasn't something he dealt with, meaning he was flat broke at the moment. He was looking to rent a room, but he couldn't afford their cheapest unit. There was a lot of things about society that he just didn't understand. He was going to have a hard time surviving on his own in this society. Lucky for him, he had made a good impression on a particular healer. Xiao Qiu, Xiao Qiu, Xiao Qiu. He wasn't used to his name being called, but he looked up eventually. The healer from the secret room was there. She didn't appreciate him not knowing her name and calling her that healer. She explained her name to him so that he would never forget it. Above all else, she was relieved that he was still alive. The best thing about her was that she was quick on the uptake. She owed him her life, so he would be staying with her from now on. She explained the history of her city as they walked to her home. It only dated back 40 years. It was created after the disaster struck. The rapid development and urbanization of the original city had transformed it into an urban village. They reached her home around the time she got done with her story. She explained that he wouldn't have to worry about her inconveniencing him, that he would have his own separate room. The medal next to her entryway caught Zhao's eye. Her father had received it after the great disaster. He was a hero and a soldier. He was much stronger than a simple level 2 professional like herself. He was a level 5 melee professional who had participated in many battles. He loved telling stories about the time he spent fighting side by side with the mask. They were so close. Not only did they camp together, but they also ate food from the same pot. She didn't know whether the stories were true or not. The stories had been recited in her family since she was a little girl. She knew they were most likely lies. Her father was a drunkard who liked to dabble in the art of wordplay. None of that sounded like the mask the world knew. She explained to Xiao her father had passed away. He suffered greatly from the time he spent in the war. While his body was healed, his soul would never bounce back. And he passed away shortly after being discharged from the army. Xiao inquired about her mother, and she explained her mother had passed after giving birth to her sister. "Don't you dare give me such an expression. All that is in my past, and can't you see I'm living well?" She showed him around her house. "I'll get you a quilt, but things like underwear and pajamas, you're going to have to provide for yourself." A place like this was not what he was expecting. As soon as he started earning money, he would make sure to pay her rent. A little girl in a wheelchair rolled out. She was not pleased with having an intruder in her home. Her sister explained the situation and told her he will be staying with them from now on. "Oh, big sister, you're so kind to bring people you just met to our humble abode." She turned around and headed back inside without another word. "Don't worry, she'll get used to you eventually. She's just not too happy at the moment." A person she looks up to is being judged unfairly in the public's eye today. Xiao was shocked that he had so many fans. He really believed the whole world was against him. Yan-Cici's little sister scanned through the trash that the internet was spouting about her hero. "He's just a selfish bastard who tossed away all our precious resources. There's still a lot of dangerous things out there that was his responsibility to protect us from, and he just chose to walk away. No one should believe that he just gave away his power. Look how he teleported away at the end." Yan's little sister was furious at the things she read. It's like people from this world are blind. How could they lie to themselves about the reality of the world they lived in? The mask wasn't the one relying on anyone. Mankind should be thanking him for what he did for them. She went to work fighting the warriors on the other side of her keyboard. She had no time to be bothered by her sister, dinner, or her sister's guests. "The only person I'd come out there for has just been shunned by a retarded civilization." The two of them sat down for a simple dinner prepared by Yin. He was used to eating anything he could get his hands on, so this was most definitely a delicacy. Back then, he truly was a real hero. He sacrificed everything for the safety of mankind. The news continued to slander the reality of things that happen. The world was hell-bent on not being indebted to a single man. Without the earth, the sun rotates just the same. Without mask, human beings can also move forward in glory. Is the mask really running away from his crimes? Xiao, what do you think? Don't rush, you can eat as much as you like. Everyone believes him to be a criminal, so I guess he's just that, a criminal. Yen never backed down from an opportunity to stand up for the mask. She was upset that he was being cold towards a great person. Someone was shouting obscenities from the front of their house. She explained that Kaijiang Investment had been harassing her family. They were threatening to burn the house down with them inside. She rushed outside to confront them. "So, we finally get to see you face to face. You know you're a hard person to track down." Yan had never misled them. She was always truthful and to the point. She had no interest in selling her family's home. They knew too much about her personal situation and wasted no time jumping on her about the tragedy that befell her and her team earlier that day. One of the intruders was a professional capable of playing mind games with his prey. They were giving her 5 days before they began their harassment upon her family. They had also dropped her offer from $3 million to $100,000 federal dollars. She would never sell her house, so it really didn't matter. They were relying on information that they had attained illegally. They knew she needed money to continue to get her little sister's treatment. And currently, her bank account only possessed $30,000. Xiao had had enough of this and decided to make his presence known. The douchebag intruder rushed in to greet who he believed to be her boyfriend. As he introduced himself, Yen screamed for him not to shake the guy's hand. That he was a mage who specialized in mental attacks. But it was too late. Xiao had fell into the trap. The douchebag rushed in expecting to shatter Zhao's mental state. He wouldn't be too rough on the boyfriend. He would just make him take a nap for a few months. But he realized something wasn't right. He should have made it there by now. As he stopped and checked his surroundings, he realized that he was in trouble. He needed to escape this place immediately. But it was too late. A giant wave crashed down, smashing him. He was completely submerged in Zhao's mental energy. Something dark and evil loomed in the depth of this endless ocean. Monster! Turns out he was the one who would not be waking up anytime soon. Yen can't understand what tactics the douchebag was trying to use. Blackmail. That's exactly what this had to be. The smarter of the two subordinates held back his friend. He explained what was very obvious. Do you believe you could take out someone who just took out our leader? Do you believe you're on our leader's level? They realized they were in a bad place and needed to retreat immediately. The message is clear, Yen. We didn't expect you to be able to find someone to protect you so quickly. But let this be a warning to you. If you dare attack our people, things won't go so easy next time. Did you put him in a coma, Xiao? Yes and no. He forced his way into my mental world. This is simply just the consequences of his action. How long have you been putting up with the harassment? Not long after my father died about 4 years ago. At the time we were financially stable. So, they chose to use scare tactics. Whenever I wasn't around, they would beat on the door and threaten my little sister. Fortunately, I became a level 2 healer and joined the captain's team. That alone kept them at bay all this time. They didn't even wait 1 day before trying to attack us again. Why did the government not help you? They were set up to give preferential treatment to families of the soldiers who fought in the Great War. Xiao realized that even though he had said these practices in place, they obviously weren't working. The simple answer to that is money. Why would they help us, when it would be more beneficial to help the wealthy people over there? Yen insisted that he was her guest, and he shouldn't be helping her wash the dishes. He explained that this was the least he could do to show his gratitude. If she was going to house him and feed him, he would do as much as he could to relieve her burdens. She explained that her debts to him continued to grow. Not only did he save her life, but he protected her home from dangerous individuals. What are your plans moving forward? Are you going to join a new team? I'm hoping that the captain wakes up. If not, I won't have any choice but to find a new reliable team. The reality of what goes on in secret realms aren't very good. Not only do parties compete to gain as much as they can from each secret realm, but there are rumors about parties who backstab their individual members. The mask can only do so much for us normal people. Even with his rule of people being forbidden to kill each other in the secret realms, nothing really stopped it from taking place. She let him know that if she did find a party, he would be the first one she recommended it to. Xiao Qiu knew that no one would stand by a monster in battle, and that the path he had chosen would be a solitary one. Task: Night Dweller Level 4 Secret Realm. Task description: This is not a challenging task, but unexpected benefits may come if you raid this secret realm. Test requirements: Clear the secret realm alone. Remaining preparation time. 12 hours. A portal ripped open inside of a Gothic church. Xiao Qiu stepped in ready to take care of business. Thanks to the system, he was able to enter a dungeon whenever he wanted, from wherever he wanted. This allowed him to skip the official channels. He dated the dungeon to be Middle-era European. He stopped in front of the two gargoyles and knew immediately that they were his enemies. They ripped themselves from their perch, ready to do battle. Scarlet Gargoyles. Level 3. When there are no enemies, they just look like statues. But when people pass by, they will become a ferocious beast. Quality stone's surface gives them high defense, and also makes their fangs more dangerous. Stone gargoyles were a fearsome enemy. They had a strong body that wasn't weak to magic. Neither physical nor magical attacks did much to them. The Slash Iron team would have been wiped out immediately against such a force. But Xiao was ready for this battle. Such a pity you guys have to encounter me. Without even trying, he held both their heads in the palm of his hands. Such enemies were a waste of his time. All the stained glass windows in the building lit up, and an army of gargoyles appeared. Bring it! The army ripped themselves free of their bindings and took to the air. Xiao decided to fight on their terms. He leaped in the air, punching, kicking and slashing. As time passed, the ground became littered with boulders, until there was only one left. He held it by its wings. You seem scared. I do believe stone isn't supposed to have feelings. And he ripped it apart as if it was a piece of paper. The boss made his appearance. Leader. Lux stone statue. Level 4. Compared to the gargoyles, this one was different. A large amount of time was spent to create it. One could tell it was an extinguished statue. Do you dare to crush it with your hands? What use does the demon have with the body and looks of a human? Such a look only makes me want to kill you even more. Die, you abomination. A group of 4 professionals knocked their way into the Gothic cathedral. But all they found was rubble. This makes no sense. This dungeon just appeared 12 hours ago. We are most definitely the first team to enter. Our contact in the inspection bureau made sure of that. Someone unreasonably strong was here before we came. Look at this fragment. It's split as if someone ripped it with their bare hands. How's that even possible? Look over there. The professional pointed towards a giant pillar in the Gothic church. The boss was on display, pierced through the chest with his own spear. The boss at the Secret Realm Inspection Bureau was furious. No one had any clue what was going on. They had reports coming in from the field that the dungeons were being cleared before anyone had the chance to get to them. At best, there was someone neglecting their duties. But the worst-case scenario was that someone out there had an inside man in the Secret Realm Inspection Bureau. They had to find out how this team of individuals were evading the monitoring of their division. On the surface, an amateur could miscue this for a good thing. But the reality was, this had the chance to go horribly wrong. While on the surface it seemed that the Federation was safer with this individual out there. But what if this person, who was unregistered, started ambushing the expedition teams as they showed up to clear the dungeons? The younger generation couldn't understand the horrors of secret realms before the Inspection Bureau was established. The number one cause to death wasn't monsters. Greed and desperation ran rampant. And teams had to do their best to watch out for their fellow humans above all else. It was their responsibility to make sure the world didn't fall back into such a barbaric practice. The first reported infiltration was the Level 4 Gargoyle's secret realm. And going by the evidence at hand, the intruder is Level 4 but at most Level 5. The evidence pointed to it being a single individual. The destruction of all the remains aligned with this theory. This explained why there was so much waste being left behind. A single individual had no way to process the amount of materials and spoils from so many dungeons. So, this will be where they focused their attention. They would catch this culprit by following the money. The team was ordered to keep a close eye on the market and to watch for patterns that aligned with the spoils that came from the 7 secret realms that had been hit. and they were to report it immediately. This tactic most likely wasn't going to work. Xiao really didn't have much use for the money. He didn't even mind that he was getting scammed on the material sales. His goal was primarily to get stronger. But for the time being, he had enough money to keep him from being a burden to Yen-Cece. Her voice came to his ears as soon as he thought of her. He spotted her trying to sell a sword to a shady businessman. She simply wasn't a very good salesman. She explained that the blade had history and had slain many monsters. But the salesman used that to his advantage. He explained that that was the reason why he couldn't pay much for it. With all the scratches on the blade, it would break after a few uses. Its only worth was in scrap. How can the relic her father left behind be considered scrap? He raised the price to 3,500 while implying it was only because she was looking so pitiful. The sword's name was Flying Crow. Her sister's medical expenses came first, meaning she had to let the sword go. This was going to be a big payday for the shady businessman. He knew an amateur when he saw one. The sword she was holding was forged of ember iron. The material was really rare and in turn really valuable. He would be able to sell it for at least 10,000. Xiao stepped in as the businessman was rushing her to sell. Yen-Cece was surprised to see Xiao, but it made sense that he was here making trades of his own. Xiao Qiu's system informed him that the equipment was a level 5 professional long blade. It was in the category of special equipment. Equipment description. Although at face value, it is only an old long blade, it contains some rare special metal materials, which few people knew was stained with the blood of a demon god. The question is that a blessing or a curse? Yen, would you sell me this blade? Sell it to you? The salesman was furious. He could sense this precious opportunity slipping away from him. Xiao paid her right away. The salesman knew it was over. The two sit on a bench holding their new items. Yen couldn't take so much from the man who she owed her life. Xiao insisted that she had already paid him back for saving her life, and that he at least owed her money for allowing him to stay with her and cooking him such delicious meals. He insisted she take the money for accommodation expenses at the very least. In reality, he owed her way more money for the blade. It wasn't as simple as she believed it to be. He wouldn't be able to inform her of the reasons. But the blade was worth way more than a mere 10,000. This shocked her, for this blade was just a relic of the past. But she expected he had many secrets. She was already forming a small list. How he had exited the spider dungeon before any of her team had even woke up. How he had come by so much money in such a short span of time. But she wasn't the type of person that pried at other people's secrets. She asked him to be kind to Flying Crow. It was the last thing the siblings had to tie them to their father. Flying Crow. Like a crow that comes and goes freely, hiding in the dark. The name was spot on, yet normally kept her emotions to herself. But she felt it was her responsibility to inform him of Flying Crow's history. You do know of the Great Ghost Incident. It happened here in Day City. Yes, level 10 monster emerged from a secret realm and went on a rampage through the city. Neither the army or professional heroes were able to stand in the presence of such a monster. Anyone around who could fight took up arms. It was because of their sacrifice that we, ordinary people, were able to escape. My father was also killed in that incident. The only thing left behind of him was his blade Flying Crow. The great ghost emitted a horrible radiation. It covered nearly half the city and turned everything it touched green. From the clouds in the sky down to the simple building materials that made up the foundation of the city. Ordinary people instantly became a pool of flesh and blood. And anyone that was near the incident will die eventually from radiation poisoning. You can say Qianlu was one of the lucky ones. She was touched by the radiation and lost the use of her legs. But she survived. Others weren't so fortunate. She was so talented with the sword. Her talent was so great that it allowed her to beat advanced swordsmen at her school with nothing more than a wooden practice sword. Her future was bright. We all believed one day she would become even stronger than our father. But now we have to pay high-level professionals to keep the radiation from spreading. This is the reason why I chose not to be a close combat specialist. Becoming a healer gave me a higher survival rate. I have to be here for my sister. I can't carelessly risk my life. They had me transferred from the front line to take care of the Great Ghost incident. I wiped it out with one punch. But the ghost had ran rampant in Day City for over 10 hours. I didn't realize how much havoc that monster had wreaked on the lives of the ordinary people involved in that incident. That's why I hate monsters so much. I was sure that after the Great Ghost incident, that Mask had arranged for the federal government to allocate a large amount of funds to ensure the safety of the lives of every disaster victim. Your sister should have been reimbursed for her treatments. Was there such a thing all this time? Let's head home. I feel as if a boulder has fallen off my shoulders. If you thought my cooking was good, I'll show you my real culinary skills tonight. As they left, Xiao passed by 2 members of the Bureau of Inspection, doing investigation work to unravel the trail that would lead them to him. If they only knew how close they were to the culprit. Back at home, Qianlu was taking a break from her battle with the keyboard warriors when intruders began beating on her family's door. She knew it was the people from Kaijian Investment Company. Qianlu wasn't a coward. Even without her legs, she would protect her family's home. She equipped herself and headed to battle. As she reached the front gate, the enemies forced their way in. They were happy someone was around, even if it was the little cripple. Qianlu attacked to defend her family's honor, but came crashing to the ground. Having spirit alone just wasn't enough. She laid on the ground, looking up defiantly. The leader mocked her condition. He sent his men to trash the house. We were planning to teach Xiao Qiu a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. Their search didn't bear any fruit. The leader wanted to bring the cripple back with them, but his men insisted that it was not a good idea. Kidnapping was a serious crime. So instead they decided to take a different route. He ordered one of his men to stay behind with the truck, and he was to back it in when the other 2 arrived. This way it would only be a minor accident caused by the loss of control of the truck. And it was too bad that the truck was filled with gifts collected from the residential area's garbage bins. It was definitely important for them to remain law-abiding citizens. The 2 arrived home soaked. A thunderstorm had broken out halfway through their journey. Hurry, we're almost there. Yan was shocked to see her sister Qianlu laid out on the ground. The gates had been ripped from their home. As they helped her into her chair, as she explained what happened. One day, those bastards are going to get what's coming to them. Xiao, can you take her inside? I'll go and work on the gates. She turned, heading towards the demolished gates. Xiao turned around to see a garbage truck had destroyed the entryway, and was dumping all its garbage at the feet of Yan. She was barely holding herself in check. Oh, I didn't realize this was Mrs. Yan's house. How could I have mistaken this place for the garbage dump? Well, at least it's raining. You can stand there and get clean, without having to track that mess back into your home. Expect many more gifts from the Kaijian company. Qianlu wanted to go to her sister's side, but Xiao explained that would only make things worse. Give her a minute to compose herself. Yan marched past them. There was an ominous blue haze emitting from her body. Xiao and Qianlu stood out in the rain. Can you tell me why it's like this? Tell me, is there justice in this world? In my experience, there never was. What about in the future? Don't count on it. There has to be at least fairness. Nope, that lie is just fabricated from injustice. Even the rain that falls on everyone is unequal. Xiao reached out towards her sword. It falls on those suffering as well as the unrighteous. This world is unjust. So, rain that falls in an unjust world is also unjust. Qianlu was devastated by the reality that lay before her. You do know, in my eyes your family's matters are minor. I have no interest in the trouble and injustices that you two are experiencing. I should be focusing my energy on more important things. But it seems trouble always comes for me anyway. What a pain in my ass. Mr. Xiao, why are you leaving? I have trash to take out. Are you crazy? That company is the equivalent of the Yakuza. Their boss is said to be at least level 5. And that's not taking into account the countless level 3 and 4 members they have. You just said our family's troubles are minor. I don't want you to get hurt. You don't have to take our family's struggles upon your shoulders. Yeah, this is a real hassle. A total waste of time. However, there's only one cure for these types of problems. And it most definitely involves cracking skulls. Why am I so fond of using violence to eliminate my troubles? The storm continued to batter the city of Day, forcing the citizens to take shelter. The streets were deserted, just the way an organization of bullies liked it. Xiao stepped into the frame as two well-dressed losers were leaving their headquarters. He stared up at the large headquarters and realized he had his work cut out for him. He entered the building sword in hand, and was instantly noticed by security. It had been some time since they had a little fun with troublemakers. They approached him with smiles on their face. Do you know where you are? How dare you carry a weapon in this establishment? Xiao ignored them. If they mind their own business, he'd continue to mind his. As they proceeded to stop him, he continued his stride, not missing a beat. But behind him, two puddles, filled with chunks, fell to the floor. Mission: Blood Sacrificial Blade. Description: This blade that has tasted lots of blood on the battlefield has once again been awakened. Or perhaps what was awakened was the blood of the demon god. Mission requirements: Use Flying Crow to eliminate all hostile beings. Mission reward: Flying Crow will use the blood to undergo an upgrade. Backup security wielding katanas made their way out to greet him. He's hostile, everyone be careful. The group encircled him, increasing their advantage. Two of the hotheads decided to attack first. They dashed in, increasing their momentum as they struck. Neither of their heads were still attached as their momentum took them past Xiao. The third forced his aura into his blade. This caused Xiao to look at him with fury in his eyes. The next instant, Xiao removed that arm, and intentionally stuck his blade in the man's side. The others saw this as their opening. As they charged in, he released his blade and punched them through the chest. How is the weapon wielder so strong with their bare hands? Was the last question he'd ever asked. Xiao continued on his way. Anyone with sense headed in the opposite direction. The wannabe Yakuza members was discussing the perfect subject at the moment. Profits above all else was their motto. If they managed to get the sisters' property redeveloped, they would all make a huge profit. An underling burst in to warn them that someone was killing their way up the tower. Give us the important details. How many people dare to invade our headquarters? A single individual. Only one? Someone has a suicide wish. But the leader wasn't so rash. He knew their organization did their best to avoid powerful individuals. How had something gone so wrong that they were in this situation? It sucked that he had to deal with this problem. But it was time to get to work. He stood up, too lazy to raise his axe from the floor. Before they could even make it out of the room, Xiao had made it to their location. They were shocked that someone would kill a man begging for his life. As Xiao crested the landing, fear ran down their spines upon seeing him. The leader tried to pick the right words to ready them for battle. A mage, a warrior, and a gunner struck their battle poses. Xiao commented on them being level 4 professionals, and they believed this meant he understood what kind of situation he was in. They questioned him on his reason for being there. Sir, he's the one that put Tujing in the coma. Xiao was no fool. He knew it was time to become a monster. He plunged the group into darkness. To think he thinks that turning off the lights is going to change anything. The gunner specialized in working in the darkness. As he activated his night vision, it took his brain a second to comprehend what stood in front of them. Monster! The rain continued to fall outside. Inside, it was time for bodies to start hitting the floor. The gunner was terrified of what stood before his eyes. This time, his night vision was a disadvantage, seeing as how he was the first one to die. Xiao made short work of Joseph the gunner. The stench of blood alerted his teammates to his demise. Lightning lit up Xiao's approach, saving the leader from sudden death. He was only just able to block in time. If he had been any slower, he wouldn't be contemplating the situation he was in. The mage took the opening presented to him and launched a giant ice spike in his direction. Xiao deflected it without much thought. He didn't appreciate being interrupted while playing with his prey. So, the mage lost his head without a second thought. And the leader soon followed. The flying bird sword crow was drenched in blood. If I was reinforcement for this company, I would have gone home. These guys stood no chance, if only they had valued their lives over a job. Xiao walked away, leaving a mess in his wake. The boss finally showed his face. Xiao sniffed the air and got a whiff of rank 6 professional stink. Hopefully this fencer could put up a fight. He could sense that Xiao wasn't a demon, as he didn't possess the demonic madness that one felt when in the presence of such scum. And he also knew that he wasn't a transformation specialist either, for they wouldn't be able to put out such an aura. He knew that such a creature was rare, and when it was over, dead or alive, Zhao's body would compensate him for the losses that he brought upon his company. Such a company could only exist if the people in power were backing it. This company was no different. Too bad the people in power were not on humanity's side. They spent all their time trying to fuse humans with demons. So having such a hybrid drop into their laps would make up for the failures that happened here today. The fencer vanished and went for Zhao's head. Yes, this was going to be interesting. In one move, the level 6 fencer knew what he was up against, and decided to teach the half-demon a lesson. His barrage had no effect upon Zhao's armor. The fencer decided it was time to finish this. He made a point-blank attack to Zhao's chest. A smile spread across his face as it forced the demon to dodge, putting him in the perfect position for a sleight of hand Python 357 to the face. This attack was his ace in the hole. It was so devastating that no one had ever survived. He felt it was a pity he couldn't take this creature alive. But the body should be good enough. When the smoke cleared, Xiao stood there, hate radiating from his face. And the fencer knew things had taken a bad turn. There's no way anyone could dodge that attack. He could only have evaded. If he knew I was going to faint from the beginning. Who are you? How could you know? Xiao responded. The 19th Reaper style. Xiao had never seen anyone with such a low level capable of accomplishing so much with the style that he created. It was easy to learn, and anyone could master it if they put in enough time and effort. But there was a rule that everyone who learned had to follow. Only ones who were on the path of righteousness could wield such a style. Xiao confronted him about this fact. What business is it to a monster like you? Sure, this is the style created by Mask. Can you not see that I'm using it to annihilate a monster like you? Is that not righteous? Your entire corporation is built off the back of destroying innocent families. I really don't care who stepped on your toes, or the toes of someone you care about. But let me make this easy for you to understand, demon. The progress of human society shall march on infinitely, and any force that impedes it, whether it be creatures or mankind itself, shall be deemed sinners, and their transgressions should be eradicated. The path I walk has always been righteous. A monster such as you could not comprehend such a thing. He dashed forward. A barrage of attacks encircled him as he moved. But Xiao was done playing. He brought out his heavy hitters. He decided to show this scum how the path of the Reaper was meant to be used. His first attack initiated the dodge, as his second attack hit its mark, and a barrage of attacks like no other ensued. As he lay on his deathbed, he wondered what kind of monster used sneak attacks. If you weren't so full of yourself, you would have heard me clearly tell you who I was. Xiao drew his bird blade and fed it its final meal of the night. Equipment name: Blood Raven. Unlimited growth type weapon. Equipment details: this blade that has been stained by the blood of demons welcomes its own rebirth. A muddy sea of blood is hidden within its body, and while wielding it, This bloody sea will surge forward aggressively. When the user doesn't need it, this sword can be kept within a space of the system. It can be retrieved into reality from the system at any time. Special ability. Blood Raven, unlimited growth potential. Sends forward a powerful blade of blood that can easily tear through the ground. So you aren't flying crow anymore? You're Blood Raven? You know you haven't changed at all on the surface. But I can tell you crave strength. Xiao and Blood Raven. We're going to be perfect together. An infinitely growing monster paired with an infinite growing demon blade. The two together sounded just a little OP. Xiao found a straggler and fed the raven, sending the blast out the side of a skyscraper. The battle inside the corrupt headquarters had attracted the military. I guess that's to be expected seeing as how this company had some pretty high backers. The military has spent their time, wisely blocking all escapes. They were now ready to move in. But the Commander Jiang, first priority was to limit casualties. He ordered for all attempts to be made to solve this peacefully. He knew that less than half of the people in that building was innocent. Above all else, it was the job of the federal government to lay judgment upon criminals. It was not the job of a random bystander. Whoever was inside would not be let off the hook easily, no matter what their excuse was. Xiao exited the building, surrendering peacefully. Yan Cixi rushed out to find Xiao after her sister only just informed her of his actions. Before she could make it out of her yard, the Civil Defense Army had arrived to question her. "Ma'am, are you Qian? Sir, I'm in a hurry. Did something happen? We're currently investigating this man. Is he an acquaintance of yours? Xiao Qiu?" She was worried for her friend's safety. No way he was dead because of her family's troubles. "It's okay, ma'am. He's in good health." Xiao was being held at the Civil Defense Army's exclusive prison. He wasn't being cooperative with their investigation. They hadn't managed to get a single drop of information out of him. Other than admitting to his crimes, his lips were zipped. "Our investigation has returned 0 pings on this man. He's literally a ghost. We looked into the name he gave us, Xiao Qiu, and it turned out to be related to a woman named Yan Cixi. That's where things got interesting. Our investigation triggered the people over at the Monitoring Bureau. They have been frantically searching for a mysterious thief who can bypass all their detections. They believe our suspect fits the bill. That's mysterious indeed. Give me all the information you have on this Yan Cixi. She's a level 2 professional healer, and her father was a level 5 professional who served in the army. He retired after being wounded. And the most interesting part is he was offered a position as an official in the government. But he politely declined. The Great Obscenity incident took him from this world a few years ago. He was survived by his 2 daughters, the youngest of which became disabled because of the very same incident. Yan Cixi's deposition is that her original team, the Steel Cutting Squad, ran into him while exploring the secret realm. This statement is what triggered the Bureau of Investigation. There is no official record of him being there. Let me guess the Kaijiang Corporation has been harassing her family for their land rights. Yes, sir. So, we're prosecuting a righteous warrior. The head of the Monitoring Bureau, Director Arthur, was eager to put this thief away. He wasn't going to waste any time with red tape. Between him and Commander Jiang, there should be no problem seeing as how they were the 2 strongest people in Day City. Xiao was hit with a bout of nostalgia upon seeing the honors pinned to the commander's coat. The sharp eye of the commander picked up on this. Xiao Qiu, while I believe your actions were righteous, a crime is a crime. I'm pretty sure you know the extent of the punishment handed out for such a crime. You will be sentenced to death, or given the choice to be enlisted in the Atonement Battalion. In my opinion, the death penalty is the better of the 2 options. But if you survive the hell you'll be put through, you'll be acquitted of your sins and be able to return to civilization. The commander knew that the Atonement Battalion was a death trap. No one had ever returned back to civilization from that program. There was a high chance that anyone that entered would die in the first battle. And most criminals must face at least 100, and some as high as 3,000 battles. Xiao asked why serving on the front line was considered a punishment. He knew his experiences on the front line should clear him of a lifetime of sins. The commander knew a veteran of the front line when he saw one. What was your status? Warriors fighting against monsters. Or were you an other status? Xiao admitted to being other. The two men stared at each other. There was a short list of survivors of the front line. It shouldn't take them long to discover his true identity with this information. The two explained their history from the monster front line. They were both considered veterans, even though Arthur had spent drastically less time on the line. If it wasn't for the actions of Mask and the first group of heroes, the divide between humans and monsters would not have been formed. This medal signifies the fact that I fought under the great hero Mask. At the time I was younger, and the best I could do was to follow him from afar. As someone who's been on the front lines, you should understand how important this peaceful environment is. And your actions could directly endanger all we've worked hard for. Can you enter special realms without being noticed? Xiao neither admitted nor denied the accusations. Such news could lead to social unrest. Your actions could lead to the death of an unknown number of professionals, and cause our stable world to fall into chaos. Xiao showed no signs of caring. The two veterans picked up on this, and tried to talk sense into the young fellow. The federal government won't take kindly to your attitude. It's the equivalent of trying to smash a rock with an egg. I do hope you decide to confess. If we send you to the federal capital, things won't go so easily. And I hate to see the talent of the young wasted. The two veterans left the room, leaving Xiao to his thoughts. He had fond memories of the federal capital. The fact that he wanted to visit just wasn't possible at the moment. Main mission: the Great Obscenity Reincarnation. Mission description: who would have imagined that a few years ago the Great Obscenity wasn't completely eradicated? Its residue, infectious radiation in people's body, is actually an unstable source of calamity. If not completely removed, then the Great Obscenity will be reborn from accumulated enhanced infectious radiation over time. Since the government did not make it their priority to cleanse away all traces of radiation, there's a high chance that the Great Obscenity will return in the next few hours. Mission objective: destroy the new calamity. Mission reward: Great Obscenity Core. Xiao as the Mask was never that impressed by the calamity level monsters. They were only ever as strong as level 13, and the weakest being as weak as level 7. He really didn't need the system to tell him that the Great Obscenity would come back. This exact scenario happened in his previous life. Not long after the first time he went through that scam of a trial. The Great Obscenity laid wait in the cells of a professional, eventually turning them into its host. It's just like a weed. No matter what you do, you can't eradicate it. If you leave the smallest root in the ground, eventually it'll come back. He had been just transferred to the front line when the calamity hit. It took him time to get back to eradicate it. Even though he killed it with one punch, the public still looked down on him for not being faster. The disrespect, verbal abuse he received as a hero. How come you weren't fast enough? You should always be the first one to arrive on the scene. We've given you such light punishment, and you still don't know how to be grateful. This is your fault. If you had killed it the first time, this wouldn't have happened again. You should apologize to the public. Apologize to the world. He put his life on the line for these people, and they made him get up in front of them and apologize for sacrificing everything for them. Not once, but twice in his past life. That's why this time around, the hero Mask doesn't exist. Only Xiao Qiu. And he wouldn't take responsibility for saving everyone when the calamity hit. They can do it themselves. The two old veterans discussed their strategy moving forward. Arthur, I've been retired from the front lines for a while now. You know more about the status of the monster front than I do. Do you think what he says is possible? It shouldn't be too hard to find out. I've never seen anyone his age have such power. If you saw the horrors in that building, you would think there was a monster outbreak. Even the wounds left by his blade were unusual. A blade which we've searched tirelessly for, and haven't been able to recover. I'm sure he's cultivating multiple professional paths at the same time. There's no other explanation. It's highly likely we have a genius on our hands. Most people would have a hard time even touching a level 6 professional. And he casually chopped one's head off. And to be traversed in multiple class systems. It takes most people a lifetime to get the hang of just one. He's more like a dumb genius. To throw your life away over such trash like Kaijiam. We have no other choice but to leave his judgment up to the Federation. Yeah, a Federation that even judged the mask, and threw our first line of defense out the window. What bad timing for such a young genius. Star City. The federal government capital. Before the Dark Ages, the whole site that this beautiful masterpiece resides on was that of a third-tier city of the 20th and 21st century. This whole city is a beacon to mankind. Its purpose was to lead mankind into the future. The Federal Council sat around discussing Xiao. There was a difference of opinion at the table. Some believed that the horror that he showed in a single night could only be punished with the death penalty. Others believed they should cultivate such talent. But the group of old men trying to hold on to power wasn't interested in someone who could be the next mask. They believed him to be a danger to the public. The most vocal among them was the true owner of Kaijian Corporation. He was furious he lost his cash cow in a single night. He cared nothing about the lives lost. All he cared about was the money lost and the time it would take to get the corporation back up and running. He was only interested in saving face. He was upset that the leader wanted to send his target to the front line to die out of the public's eye. What message would that send to all his other white gloves around the world? And with that, the conversation turned back to the subject that the president was obsessed with. The head spent considerable resources searching for the mask with no luck. None of the council members dared to open their mouth. No one just disappears. He has to be somewhere in this world. Yet none of you have found a single trace of him. Are you all not worried that one day he's going to pop up? And give us a surprise of a lifetime? Sir, we have nothing to worry about. He released all his power. Then what do you call that disappearing act? What can he do with whatever he has left, Mr. President? Sir, our propaganda machine is in full force. His fans are disappearing by the day. No one in the public would ever support him if he tried to attack us. He represents an unknown danger to all of us. The president knew he had complete power over the Federation. There was only one man out there with a trump card against him. He conceded so much power to everyone in this room just to get rid of the mask, and he's still out there. For the sake of everyone here, we need to find the mask and put a leash on him. Let's move on to other topics. Sir, the monster frontlines seem to be failing. The appearance of monsters have increased by 32% over the previous month. This is the first time there has been an increase since the founding of the Federation. Everyone knew this was a clear side effect of losing the mask. He was the perfect soldier. Why did we choose to attack him? He never interfered in any of our business. How dare you question the decisions of this council? Do you believe without the mask our Federation won't survive? I believe if something serious happened, we would be in trouble. Peace makes soldiers weak, and the council should do something about it. The president ordered the most valuable troops to be sent to the front line. A council member instantly refuted this idea. The city defenders are the last line of defense for all the cities around the world. It would be unwise to redeploy them. This triggered infighting. Yes, it would hurt your pocketbooks to lose access to the city defense force. Yeah, doesn't your family supply the equipment for the defense force? It doesn't sound like it'll bode well for your company. How dare all of you slander me? The president put his hand down. It's settled. The city defense force will be redeployed to the most vulnerable areas. There hasn't been a wide-scale demon outbreak in cities in years. It's imperative that we downsize them immediately and have this criminal brought to the capital post-haste. It'll be good for everyone if an example of him is made in the public eye. Back in Day City, the two sisters were sent home. You two have nothing to do with this incident, so you're free to go. If you're needed by the courts, you will be summoned as a witness. Jianlu was not pleased by any of this. The female soldier continued to run on at the mouth, oblivious to the feelings of the two. Vicious. Why did you call him vicious? He stood up to such trash and he's vicious. He has the blood of countless humans on his hand. Killing is not the solution to anyone's problems. He killed not a single innocent person. The whole corporation has an unknown number of victims all over the city, and he's vicious. This whole system is the definition of viciousness. The commander approached, agreeing with everything that she said. He believed that each one of them deserved to die. It was not his place to be judge and jury. That task belonged to the Federation and the Federation alone. Qianlu was having none of this. Then how come you chose not to stop them? Just like the light from the sun, there will always be darkness that can't be dispelled by light. So you believe we ought to just endure the darkness? The world was built off of sacrifices, young lady. So, you're saying that there's no way for the world to resist the darkness? Your personal rebellion is unjust. So, you're saying I should lay down and take what's fed to me? Even if it's unjust? If that's the case, this whole world is a mistake. Yensi's heart throbbed for her little sister. She had taken on the world and its injustice, and no longer had the ability to scream in its face. You're not going to accomplish anything here. Let's go home, little one. As they left, the commander wished the young lady had the ability to stand. The anger in her is beyond anything I've ever seen. The world is lesser because of her disability. Who knows where I would be if I had the same level of anger when I was her age. She should get over it. Nothing will ever come from it in her condition. Her rage is worthless to her and the world. Qianlu, go get rest. I'll clean up the yard and think of a solution for Xiao. The events of the day had broken the restraints that Qianlu held inside. If there are areas in the world where the sun doesn't shine, then I shall be the light. If there are such areas of darkness, then there is no need for the sun to exist. Qianlu rose from her chair and prepared to be the justice the world needed. Yensici rushed back. She had forgotten the house was still a mess. She was shocked that her sister was walking towards her. Qianlu, quick, run! Her rage from that day was all that was needed to resurrect the great obscenity. The civil defense forces were in an uproar all over the world. People were handing in their resignations left and right. Everyone knew that the monster front lines was essentially a death sentence. The commander was in the middle of a speech to gain control of the situation, when he felt the presence of the great obscenity. Commander, what's going on? It's not possible, but the great obscenity is back. The commander knew that time was of the essence. He had no time to reassure them one way or the other. He burst through the skyscraper's window. As he leaped out, he gave the order to begin evacuating Day City. The citizens of Day City went about their business as usual. News of Xiao's capture was being broadcast to the public. 3 days ago, the city defense force swiftly captured the culprit behind the massacre at Kaijiang building. Pink flowers began to blossom all over the city. A young man wondered if it was due to the warmer weather recently, until he noticed their rapid growth. A bumblebee landed on a flower, only to be consumed. She swiftly transformed into a flower. The whole city was unaware of the danger that awaited them. The young man's brother wondered what was wrong as the light had turned green. The sight that unfolded was not pleasant. His body vanished, sending petals floating on the wind. The citizens were unaware of the dangers the petals possessed. Some were already in full panic mode, as giant amalgamation rolled through the streets like children at play. The citizens were being transformed into rose-headed beasts, one after the other. Lucky for them, a hero with high charisma was there to save them all. Psych, this fool will most likely be dead soon. He swung his broadsword, cutting the amalgamation in half. Cool words flowed from his lips. And without putting up much of a fight, he too was consumed. That was all it took for the other professionals to realize the danger they were in. That green glow. Is this the great obscenity? The civil defense force was outnumbered before they arrived on the scene. Commander, this is the opposite of the great obscenity. Instead of decaying, they're all growing. Nothing has truly changed. If we don't stop this here, the world is doomed. He named them human flowers. I'm going to call them rose heads. The commander ordered his men to be on guard. Nothing's ever simple but monsters, so be ready. They were going to focus on containment. They were each to spread out by streets and keep the rose heads isolated to their section. The defense force members took no time following this order. The citizens were being consumed one after the other as they ran for their lives. The commander ordered the citizens to move. Otherwise, they'd be toast. He let out a dragon's breath that blasted through the city, its intent to burn away the infection. All he did was give the spectators a false sense of hope. As the rose heads burst into flames, their petals scattered, infecting anyone in their vicinity. The great obscenity's pathogens passed on, even through ash. The spread of roses was only the beginning. It was as if Mother Earth was reclaiming what was hers. The city was quickly covered in green. No human in sight. And no one was safe. Orders were passed around that fire only spread the pathogens faster. They had to contain the spread to the city, as the infection easily assimilated normal humans. Arthur caught up with the commander. The two were attempting to brainstorm a solution to their problems. Arthur had seen the first calamity with his own eyes, and knew this was the great obscenity. But at the same time, it wasn't. The only explanation was that this calamity beast had true immortality. Immortality was not unheard of in nature. There was a jellyfish which, upon reaching maturity, returned to a juvenile state and started over, repeating this process forever. But even with this, it wasn't truly immortal. If it caught a disease, it would be eradicated. The same had to be true for the great obscenity. The commander processed the situation. The original radiation must have lain in wait, evolving over time. What we have here is the evolution of what we didn't finish the first time around. Those bastards. What do you mean, Arthur? The mask warned us this would happen. He ordered the government to treat every victim's radiation, that they had to remove every instance of the radiation in Day City. But it didn't take long for them to abandon the advice given to them. The group corruptly embezzled the money the mask had set aside for the victims. He warned us and we didn't listen. We'll have to discuss this later, Arthur. We will get to the bottom of why this happened later. But now is the time for action. I need your monitoring division to track the obscenity's energy source. Inform me immediately if it spreads outside the city limit. And I need to know ASAP where the main source of energy is located. Commander, you're going to get yourself killed if you go up against that beast. Arthur, time is of the essence. At the moment, that calamity hasn't surpassed rank 9. If I have any chance of defeating it, I have to do it now. The monster is more natural disaster than a combat force. All these things lie in my favor. This will be our only chance. If we fail, the price will be high. I'll get you what you need, Commander. Promise me you'll be careful. The news of the calamity was spreading around the world. The reporters in Sky City reported through their shock. But in this modern world, mainstream media wasn't the only place to receive updates of what was going on abroad. People conversed and stayed up to date through live streams on applications all around the world. And the top subject was the mask and his whereabouts. Even after tossing him out, the world still relied on his strength. No matter what the situation, Mask was always the solution and the scapegoat. Mankind was simply obsessed with their social media. Even in a life and death situation, you have to keep your Twitter updated. Who wants to read all this trash? Let's just skip through it. It seems the news is boring and just as useless as Twitter posts. Long story short, the commander is about to hand a beating to Mother Nature. So, let's skim through these news posts also. Here we go. He had finally found the being who was responsible. Xianlu waited on a flower high in the sky, looking like a goddess waiting to be worshipped. I've seen plenty of things just like you. If the world doesn't work the way you think it should, you will forcefully impose yourself upon it. There have been cases throughout history where humans follow monsters who pose to be biblical reincarnation of great beings. This was a common practice when monsters first appeared on our world. But in the end, even the humans you trick will see the light eventually. Arthur warned the commander that the little girl from earlier was gone and this was 100% a monster. The commander understood what was standing in front of him and continued their conversation. It was the last thing on my mind that only a few hours after seeing you that you would become such a monster. I bet you regret it. The only thing I regret is that I didn't slaughter you while you sat in that wheelchair. The commander charged up and shot a beam directly towards Qianlu's head, removing half her skull in the process. The cameraman gave all praise to the commander. He would end this before it started. He was most definitely the hope of Day. She reacted as if she had just received a light buzz cut. Qianlu glanced over her shoulder. A smile plastered on her face. It's useless. It only took her a few seconds to regain her previous human resemblance. The commander knew her rapid regeneration only spelled trouble for his attempts to save his city. This is crazy. Half her face was gone just now. But why isn't she dead yet? Isn't she just a monster? He would just have to hit her harder. He would continue to hit her until she didn't get up. His attacks had no effect. Her regeneration was just too strong. Is this the so-called sunlight that dispels darkness? She didn't waste any time throwing that into his face. And worse than that, she radiated killer intent towards him. The commander wasted no time retreating. But it was all in vain. She was much faster than him, and before he landed, she was on the offensive from behind his back as she continued to berate him with his words. They were moving so fast that the cameraman couldn't keep track of them with the naked eye. The commander realized the environment was a disadvantage to him. The monster was capable of moving to the vicinity of any plant in the city. And plants just so happened to be everywhere. Arthur was worried for the safety of the commander. There was no way he could win this fight. But the commander knew the outcome of retreating. The people in charge would resort to their ace in the hole. But even if he wished to retreat in his current situation, how would that be possible? It was time to put it all on the line. He removed his jacket. His seriousness evident on his face. The masked metal was precious to him. Qianlu the monster was relentless with her tongue. Is this what a trapped animal looks like? No, this is me living every second to the death. The commander let his elemental energy radiate from his body, sending the beam skywards. It is known that elemental professionals are not immune to elemental effects, so using elements to overload can result in death. This can only mean he's preparing a suicide attack on the Great Obscenity. But it turns out the commander was not committing suicide. He was using ultimate release, a move that used every last bit of his life energy in his attack. After this there wouldn't be anything left. Arthur was sure he was going to lose his friend on this day. Qianlu wasn't worried in the slightest that the commander had essentially just upgraded from level 7 to level 8. If the commander lived to see another day, he would be nothing more than an ordinary person, prone to sickness and disease, like everyone else. He had no time for her silliness and instantly dashed in. She screamed that everything he did was futile. It only took a single thought, and she would move anywhere in the city. But to her surprise, his fists were faster than her mind. Half her body was blown away. But the commander was in no better shape. In his current condition, he was prone to the infection. But his elemental lightning burned it away, causing an unparalleled pain. The cameraman should know better by now. That this wasn't going to end well. The commander's attack would only cause her to stop playing around and to become serious. Arthur pored over the data his instruments produced. The more he saw, the more he realized that her power spike didn't make any sense. And that's when it hit him. Antaeus is a figure from Greek mythology who was believed to be a giant and the son of the earth goddess, Gaia, and the sea god, Poseidon. According to the myth, Antaeus was undefeated in battle as long as he remained in contact with the earth. Hercules, the famous Greek hero, defeated Antaeus in a wrestling match by lifting him up off the ground, thereby breaking his connection to the earth and weakening him. The Great Obscenity was using the city and all the people in it as her power source. As long as she was here, she was essentially immortal. She's Legion. She's one, but also many. The monitoring bureau knew before anyone else that there was a change going on the battlefield. Qianlu's energy was rapidly rising, exceeding previous records recorded by the bureau throughout history. The great obscenity was rapidly outpacing the commander's current level. It had no idea that humans could reach such heights by burning themselves alive. All the commander's life he had dreamed of wandering the world with the sword, protecting the innocents. With the power you had the ability to dispel the darkness. But instead, you chose to let so many people drown in the dark. I want to know why you made this choice. All the creatures in the city screamed why over and over, as they rushed to become one with their goddess. The civil defense soldiers couldn't hold their shields up any longer. But lucky for them, the Rose Heads had lost interest in destroying them. Their goddess needed them immediately. The soldiers were surprised to be alive. But as the shadow covered them in darkness, they realized this situation had just got serious. Vines swirled around Qianlu as she transformed into a being capable of destroying the world. The commander answered her, disappointing her and me alike. It's because of this damn world. And in this world, death is nothing new, and living isn't new either. The news continued to disappoint viewers. With premature reporting, people around the world cheered, believing the commander to be victorious. Qianlu's vines split, surrounding the commander as he approached her core. Since being alive is nothing new, then why don't you go to hell, along with everything in this damn world? She smashed him and tossed the petals away. Just like an egg against a stone. She couldn't help using his words one last time. With that, Commander Jiang didn't exist in this reality anymore. And the world stood there shocked. The daughter of the commander didn't want this thing burned into her daughter's mind for the rest of her life. People around the world was addicted to the mask. It's just as Qianlu said, this world is full of retards. They stood around, puzzled by what they were currently witnessing. It was time for the federal government to feel the wrath of the people, as it didn't take long for the world to need the presence of a mask. And the few fans he had left let their presence be known. Evacuation procedures began in the prison Xiao was being held in. The president of the Federation was furious. He couldn't get a single high-level professional to step up to the natural disaster in Day City. They needed someone to move now, not in 30 minutes. If they waited around that long, there wouldn't be a city to protect. He raged on about how if it wasn't for the sacrifices of the ones who came before, mankind wouldn't be here. If only you hadn't decided to be so ruthless when it came to the mask. The president took a seat knowing the statement to be true. It was time to resort to the one trump card mankind held. A small nuclear missile shouldn't hurt Day City that much. And the nuclear fallout afterwards should be minimum. Everybody was in agreement to level that city to the ground. They had no problem sacrificing the few to save the many. The president thought he was bloodthirsty, but these people were manic. The outcome of this situation would not leave him in a good light. Urgent news spread around the world that something was headed towards the natural disaster at high speed. The president's hopes rose. All this time, he hoped a professional was willing to stand up for mankind. He was informed that this wasn't good. The reports coming in referred to the other being as a monster. Their situation was going from bad to worse. Xiao had no problem exiting the prison. He cut through obstacles in his way as if they were nothing. The prison guard was in shock. All he could say was he escaped. The city defense force stood around in shock, grieving their loss. What could they do without the commander? It only took one among them to panic to trigger a full retreat. Their captain ordered them not to run, to stand their ground. He charged towards the Rose Heads by himself, determined not to see this day end in tragedy. But what exactly could a single soldier do? His act of defiance against the monsters caught the attention of one of the retreating soldiers, who decided he too would fight alongside the captain. He burst forward with a raisin gun, but before he could take 2 steps, a dark wave sliced through the area, leaving all the Rose Heads destroyed. Some unknown force had just saved their life. The great obscenity turned towards the incoming danger. Sit tight. I'm going to go higher. The tower gave instructions that we must retreat. The cameraman wasn't planning on retreating that easy. His attention was drawn to the dark wave cutting a path through the overgrowth covering Day City. The people around the world weren't only ungrateful towards the mask. Anyone that stepped up was judged and looked down upon for not doing it sooner. The world really was just full of entitled, judgmental losers. Xiao made his way through the city, making quick work of each rose head in his path. The world believed him to be their hero, but Xiao wasn't interested in saving them. His actions were about his growth. The completion of his mission was all that concerned him. Monster's Path. Main mission. 6 Obscenity, Reincarnation. The natural disaster level monster that was once destroyed appeared again, and the shadow of destruction has enveloped the entire city. Mission objective. To eliminate the new natural disaster. Mission reward. The core of the Great Obscenity. Xiao knew firsthand that the last Great Obscenity's aura gave off the stench of decay. But this one's core aspects gave off the full vibes of life. The city was slowly becoming a primal forest. Tropical plants, vines and towering trees grew freely over everything. It was as if life was turning this area into its paradise. If no one was able to stop this natural disaster, the whole planet would become a beautiful wasteland to humans. The original decay, Great Obscenity, was just a form of evil. But this new great filth was the ultimate evil. Even though the task ahead was daunting, Xiao had no choice but to push forward. His goal was to obtain the heart of this beast, giving him the power to fight the monsters of the void who awaited him in the future. He had to kill it no matter what. Qianlu sent out a call to all beings on this planet. Living in this filthy world is an agonizing experience. I invite you to join me and surrender yourself to my cause completely. Together, we can create a world that is beautiful, free from sadness, pain, and injustice. Qianlu was acutely aware of how much she had changed. All the knowledge and experiences she had assimilated had merged with her being, and those who had sacrificed everything for their shared cause had become like family. They were united in their commitment to a life filled with joy and purpose. And as they continued to grow in numbers, more individuals would be welcomed into their community of purity, where they could thrive without the burden of sorrow. She was aware of the pain cutting its way towards her. She shouted, "Who is it?" Xiao never thought the monster he would face would be Qianlu. She wondered why he hadn't assimilated. Nothing should be immune to the pathogens she released in the air. Even the monster heading towards her should be susceptible to them. Xiao wasted no time attacking his old friend. He would do his best to free her from the prison that she resided in. She regrew the arm he decimated with his first attack, continuing the swing to squash him. The rose heads would do whatever it took to protect their master, but they were only a slight distraction. But as he sliced them down, he sensed their intentions to explode in his presence. It's fast, too fast. The natural disaster is going to have trouble facing this beast. Just watching this battle is getting my adrenaline flowing and my heart pumping. The people around the world stood in awe of what they witnessed. Some wondered whether the monster before them was actually a professional who had the look of a monster. With each explosion and burst of ash, he narrowly avoided certain death. However, it was not sheer luck that kept him alive, but rather his strength and determination. To break through the blockade as quickly as possible, the humanoid creature deliberately skirted the edge of the explosions at the critical moment, saving precious time. But it was a calculated risk, and any misstep could result in his demise. He relied on his speed, agility, and keen insight to navigate the dangerous terrain. All 3 of these qualities were crucial to his survival. The ability of humans to battle monsters lies in their superior wisdom and skill. However, the ingenuity displayed by this humanoid monster exceeds even that of a seasoned 9th level professional. Although it resembles a human, the armor it wears is rather peculiar. If a day comes when monsters surpass human capabilities, what recourse will we have? Xiao made it through the bomb field as he crested Qianlu's shoulder. The wings of a gargoyle shot from his back. This move shocked the Great Obscenity. For Zhao's original approach was only to toy with her emotions. Most humans were shocked and didn't understand the ramifications of the actions of the monster. But seasoned professionals understood how much confidence it took to perform such a high level of deception. Xiao let blood raven flow. The attack decimated the head of the natural disaster, causing her to pause all functions. Everyone. The attack worked. It successfully split the monster's head. All the rose heads around the city came to a pause. They've stopped. You see, all the humanoid flowers in the whole city have stopped. They are all not moving anymore. Have we won? Did that monster eliminate the natural disaster? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Repeated over and over all throughout the city. Qianlu spotted Blood Raven. She knew who she faced even as she asked the question. Xiao held his tongue. Qianlu was in disbelief that Xiao turned out to be a monster also. She relaxed in his presence. The two of us don't have to fight. If we combine our strength, nothing on this planet could stand in our way. We can change this terrible world together. Qianlu presented her core as a peace offering. Item name: the core of the great obscenity. Item description: only those who have been recognized by the great obscenity can use this core. The power it releases is comparable to that of all of Mother Nature. Xiao was slightly tempted by such an offer. The two of us can cleanse this dirty world. Join us and we'll spread across this planet. We'll rise to the top of the highest mountain and travel the depths of the lowest valleys. We'll travel by river and meet the sea and spread throughout its depths. Anywhere there's darkness, we'll be there to illuminate it in light. And if the two of us aren't able to accomplish this goal, we will destroy the darkness along with everything on this planet. She let her mantra be known to the world. The pain of her words was felt in all of their hearts. The sound of tens of thousands of humanoid flowers shouting at the same time is so powerful that I feel my heart about to jump out of my chest. Is this natural disaster immortal? But what's more worrying is that these two monsters seem to know each other. Xiao continued to hold his tongue. Protect humanity? Cooperate with monsters? No, he had no interest in such things. Even before he was reborn, Xiao was sickened by the mere thought of them. Now that he had been reborn, there was only one thing that mattered to him: the complete annihilation of all monsters. To achieve this goal, Xiao was willing to transform into a monster, at the mercy of the system. All that matters now is acquiring the strength and power necessary to defeat every single monster that exists. Nothing will stand in his way, and Xiao would stop at nothing until every last one of them were eradicated. So you won't talk to me? Is ending this disaster all you care about? So we'll do it your way. Either you end me, or I end the world. Qianlu said it with pure joy. Her head exploded, sending vines directly for him. She entangled him, crushing him with all her strength. He retracted his gargoyle wings, and brought out his spider claws, slicing the vines apart. She instantly swallowed him whole, and Xiao exited through the back of her skull. He realized the brain didn't possess the target he was looking for. So, the next place he would look would be the heart. As he sliced into her back, he was met by resistance that proved he was on the right track. She tried every trick she had. She hardened the vines and regenerated them as he cut into her. She resorted to flinging out a wave of explosions, which Xiao ignored, continuing his onslaught surrounded in fire and brimstones. As his armor peeled from his face, his target was being revealed. And without hesitation, Xiao fed Raven the blood of the great obscenity. Qianlu's true body hovered in the air, a blade in her chest. I didn't expect you to succeed in breaking a rock with an egg yet again, Xiao Qiu. Xiao forced the blade through to the other side. He had spent all his energy accomplishing this goal. Qianlu gently caught him as he began to fall from the sky. She was stunned at how beautiful he was to her eyes. Mask couldn't hold a candle in his presence. Qianlu reassured him that the battle was over and he was the victor. She was living on the borrowed time that her power afforded her. Have we lost? Is the city doomed? The cameraman's face lit up in pure horror. A noise no one could mistake could be heard cutting across the sky. The whole city froze in its presence. It lit up the storm clouds, announcing the doom the city would soon face. A nuclear bomb streaked across the sky. The cameraman reported this to the world. The big shots at the Federation had decided to forsake Day City for the sake of the world. The Federation president begged for forgiveness. What have I done? It's true. They are completely heartless, willing to sacrifice not just some monsters like you and me, but also an entire city if it suits their purpose. What a callous disregard for life. At the very least, I'll make sure everyone sees what kind of people who lead the Federation truly are. This will be my final act before I die. With that, Qianlu calmly walked back into her giant amalgamation. The rose heads rushed to lend her their strength. She reached out towards the nuke, ready to meet it with a gentle embrace. As she did so, she transformed into Yggdrasil, the tree of life. The nuke was only moments from contact. People around the world held their breath. As the people of Day City prepared to die, Qianlu consumed the nuke, protecting the city as best she could. The roses that had been in the vicinity vanished in an instant. Qianlu did all she could to protect Xiao from the blast. She cocooned him in her strongest vines. The mushroom cloud blossomed as the impact spread across the city. The few people who were lucky enough to be shielded wondered if it was all over. The Monitoring Bureau confirmed that the energy source the natural disaster was emitting ceased to exist. Director Arthur spoke to the memory of Commander Jiang. Old friend, Day City has been secured. As his honor jacket drifted to the ground, did the natural disaster just protect the city from the nuclear missile on purpose? No way that's the case. You must have seen it wrong. Qianlu split open, showering the city with cherry blossom petals. The sight was truly beautiful. A little girl danced around in the flowers as her father worried for her safety. But as she made contact with the petals, nothing happened. The calamity was truly over. Xiao held Qianlu in his arms as she said her parting words. I didn't realize that spring was this beautiful. As she reached up, she vanished into a sparkle of green dust. Monster's Path. Main task: destruction of the reincarnation of the Great Obscenity completed. Reward: Core of the Great Obscenity delivered. A green heart pulsed in Zhao's hand. He was shocked that he had obtained the heart of such an evil enemy and a dear friend. Without a second thought, Xiao equipped the heart of the Great Obscenity and vanished from Day City. People watching at home were ecstatic for the survival of mankind. Everyone was so wrapped up in their own celebration that no one noticed the rose heads reverting back to humans. Yan Sisi had been one of the rose heads this entire time. The people at home were shocked to silence by what they were witnessing. A few among them realized that even the people who were destroyed by the bombs were returning to life. The internet message boards filled with people arguing over the merits of whether the nukes should have been used or not. The next most popular topic revolved around the mask. The opinions ranged from being for the mask to people believing that humanity would always fare well without him. After the incident, the government cleared the internet of all traces of their crime against humanity. It didn't matter if it was a live stream or a news broadcast. All of it vanished without a trace. The big shots sat around the Federation headquarters meeting room in Star City. The topic of discussion was how they would seamlessly move forward from this incident. Sir, we have controlled the discussion of the incident. But majority of the people in the world witnessed what happened in Day City. Because we used public opinion to condemn the mask. The public won't rest until we explain ourselves to them. The president sat there ignoring the whole lot of them. The vultures were at his door. How had he ended up in such a situation? He knew the members around him were plotting his demise. The president's right-hand man had an idea that would place the blame squarely on who was responsible for this incident. Even though everyone here agreed to use the nuclear weapon to exterminate the natural disaster. How has the mask got away with taking zero responsibility for this incident? Mr. Song? How can this be related to the mask? We have no idea where he's hiding. That's exactly the reason why this event is his responsibility. If he had been there, none of this would have happened. The world is paying a heavy price because of his choices. All those pointless sacrifices were because of him. He throws all of the sacrifices humanity made for him in our faces. And he dares leave without even saying goodbye. forgetting the world's generosity in an instant. So, the responsibility of what happened in Day City lay squarely on his shoulders. Everyone in the headquarters meeting room was left speechless by the line of logic presented. The president remained seated long after everyone had left, his second-in-command assuring him that he would take care of everything, down to the smallest details. In truth, the president wasn't worried in the slightest. A new player had emerged on the scene, and even if this pawn was only 1/10 as strong as the mask, it would still be enough to solve all of humanity's problems. The president turned his attention to the matter at hand, the Morning Sun Plan. His right-hand man explained that since Experiment 268 had been successful, the plan had been moving forward rapidly. There were numerous test subjects who, even without activating the new human state, were able to live stable lives for a long period of time. However, activating the new human state carried the risk of causing the body to rapidly enter into a state of collapse. Despite this, there was still insufficient evidence to determine whether the fusion of monsters and humans wasn't entirely feasible. If the mask was the one who saved humanity from extinction, then we will be the ones who elevate humanity to heights never before seen, he said confidently. When the power of monsters becomes accessible to all of mankind, we will be elevated to the level of gods. The battlefront against the monsters spans not just a single line, but an expansive area of up to 1 million square kilometers. In ancient times, this area was a part of Africa, South America, and even Antarctica, as recorded in the Dark Age. However, in the 100 years since humanity was nearly wiped out, the land has undergone terrifying tectonic shifts and collisions, compressing the natural processes that would have taken millions of years into a mere century. As a result, the landscape is almost unrecognizable, with towering mountains and newly formed bodies of water where there was once flat terrain. Before the arrival of the army led by the mask, there was no sign of humans on the front lines. Monsters that emerged from the secret realms had taken over the entire area. These monsters not only lived in their own cities, but also relentlessly attacked humans in other regions, resulting in countless casualties. There is a place even more dreaded than the front lines of the monster battle. It was a small city in the country once known as Thailand, but is now infamous as the birthplace of calamity. This is the very spot where all the horror and devastation began, and it was only thanks to mass that humanity was able to set foot on this land once again. With his unstoppable methods, he compressed and twisted the demon's land like the wrath of gods, turning it into the front line between humans and monsters. From living day to day not knowing if they would survive, to making rapid progress, everything was made possible by this godlike man. Inside a dense forest blocked by mountains on all sides, 4 soldiers guarded the entrance to a portal. They argued about who would explain what happened to their captain. They all feared her response as she exited the portal. She had just cleared a secret realm with a demon boss of level 7, doing so while being rank 7 herself in only 30 minutes. The power of their captain Jiangling was amazing. No wonder she was known as a genius. Why do you all look so dumb? What's going on? Speak up. A natural disaster-level monster appeared in Day City. The incident was resolved, but your father, Commander Jiang, perished in the attack. He sacrificed himself for the well-being of the whole city. It was a magnificent display that brings honor to your family's name. Noted, we'll head to the next secret realm. As the group marched through the forest, Captain Jiangling's underlings hung back, gossiping. Do you think she's really okay? Of course, she's okay. Her nickname isn't Unmovable Ice for no reason. They both straightened up as she threatened to have them both sent to the atonement camps. The formation of secret realms in the monster front lines occurs at an accelerated rate compared to anywhere else in the world. It is only through the efforts of Commander Jiangling's team and their high efficiency that the number of secret realms forming in a continuous manner can be kept under control. The stronger the team, the more secret realms they had to contend with, and her team was no exception. They were seriously worried for their captain, and one of them felt it was wise to accompany her into the secret realm, even though they hadn't fought alongside her in a long time. They didn't want their group to become her permanent cheerleaders. She didn't mind their concern, but could not let them doubt her skills. With her spear in hand, she walked into the dungeon alone, disappearing into the portal. Her team felt relieved as her presence vanished into the portal, and hoped for her safe return. As she traveled deeper into the dark cavern without facing a single monster, surprise was clear in her eyes as she found them all slaughtered. It seemed a certain protagonist had relocated to a more secluded location, and was obviously putting great effort into achieving his goals. Captain Jiangling had never ran into a situation like this before. Out on the front lines, you rarely ran into a pre-pillaged secret realm. It literally just wasn't heard of. And to make matters worse, the wounds on the monster were consistent with a single attacker. There was no way there was anyone else in existence just like her. She sensed killing intent and her reflexes put her on edge. But the attack never came. She knew the monsters responsible had to be nearby. She rushed to the sounds of battle and found a single individual taking on 3 street sharks. She couldn't believe someone at such a low level was able to handle their ground against such beasts. His combat skills were simply exquisite. She had never witnessed someone with fatal wounds hold their ground with simply skills alone. There was no way he was normal. It was obvious that the street sharks had seriously done a number to him. She decided to intervene, for there was no way he would last much longer. She landed with a lightning smash, forcing the stranger back. Jiangling wasted no time piercing the first street shark through the heart. She instantly relieved the second one of his head. Their insides looked just like tuna. Without his comrades, the third street shark stood no chance. She hit Xiao with a barrage of questions. "Where's your team? What's your name? Why are you here?" She realized instantly that the lights were on but no one was home. The next moment, Xiao was out for the count. This totally disappointed her. She was hoping for an ally she could respect. Instead, she gained another burden. The street shark gang wasn't going to put up with such disrespect on their turf. The whole family decided to come out and deal with the intruders. Jiangling wasn't impressed. Purple electricity started from the tip of her spear and spread across her whole body. And while her and her father may have had their problems, there was one thing they saw eye to eye. Monsters. All deserved to die. Her electricity arced outwards, spreading throughout the cave. Her team stood at attention, waiting for their captain to re-emerge from the portal. The newest member of the team was worried, but the others reassured him that she was probably just letting off a little steam. After all, her father had just died. They could all just imagine what the monsters inside were going through. They believed her personality to be very similar to the commander's. Even if they had power similar to the two, there was no way they could charge forward so bravely after losing a family member. To stand up to a natural disaster, knowing your life was surely forfeited, was seriously badass. None of them had such courage. The group hushed as the captain was returning through the portal. Captain Jiang returned with Xiao slumped over her shoulder. Her team wondered if he was a monster she found inside the secret realm. They had no idea they had hit the nail on the head. The group rushed Xiao to the closest army camp. Majority of the camps scattered across the front lines were relatively small, only servicing a few thousand people. There were larger camps, but they were few in numbers. Those serviced at any one time tens of thousands of people. Only 1/4 of the residents were professionals. The rest had ties to the military. You would think in such a world that professional healers wouldn't be too hard to come by. But in reality, there was a shortage of healers. There were barely enough to fight off the hordes of enemies as they invaded the world. Because of this, normal human doctors had plenty of work. Zhao's condition was stable at the moment. The doctor had no idea how a human could survive such trauma. His internal organs were all harmed to varying degrees. Even a professional should have a hard time surviving such injuries. It turns out he seemed to have a passive healing ability, the likes of which the doctor had never seen before. All Captain Jiang heard was this low-level professional is seriously strong. They had no idea why his body was saturated with low levels of radiation. But such radiation explained the scars on his face. The hospital's plans were to cordon him off because said radiation. They had no doubt he would fully recover. Between his innate healing abilities and their care, he should be discharged very quickly. But Army Camp N3's Supreme Commander Liang Jingye tossed the hospital's plans right out the window. Xiao would return with them. There was no need for him to remain in the hospital. The Supreme Commander was Jianling's mentor, and they wasted no time relocating to their headquarters. Back at the command post of Army Camp N3, the Supreme Commander began Jianling's debriefing. They're fixing to start the usual bit where the Federation takes credit for Zhao's hard work. The central government was hard at work cleaning up the aftermath of the natural disaster of Day City. It was the consensus that because of the hard work of the Federation, the natural disaster as a whole ended on a good note. The world was still in mourning over the lives that were lost during the tragedy. There were quite a few soldiers who perished during the incident, and everyone felt the need to honor that sacrifice. Jianling's father had died honorably. The Supreme Commander insisted that dying in battle was the highest honor for a warrior like them. One day, he too would perish in exactly the same way. He knew Jianling was private, so he took it upon himself to block the media's attention towards her. They were eager to get their hands on the children of Commander Jiang. But the world would have to do without such closure. The Supreme Commander insisted that now was the time for Jiangling to lay down the grudges she held against her father. After growing to such a level, he knew she understood that the choices her father made those many years ago, even she would make in her current form. After all, her hatred was really against herself, not her father. As he left, he decided to drop her a few hints. Cough, cough. He insisted Jiangling would be wise to learn as much about fighting and combat from her new friend as she could. For someone who could control that sword had to be very interesting. She hit him with 50 questions, but all she received in return was a cough, cough. All she could do was wait for Xiao to wake up. But she wouldn't be waiting long. For he woke with a start. He had no idea where he was. He most definitely wasn't used to being in such a vulnerable situation. But it turns out he wasn't the one with the fear. Jiangling took a few steps back and brandished her spear. Never in her life had she been threatened by the presence of a single individual. Xiao did his best to ease her worries. He wasted no time pulling the ivy out of his arm. She felt his actions to be strange. He showed no interest in caring about where he was, or how he got there. He decided for her sake that he would dialogue with her a little. Which army camp is this? And 3. Are you the one who dragged me out of the secret realm? She introduced herself and expected him to reciprocate. He obliged her with his name. I'm Xiao Qiu. The news chose this time to irritate the both of them. The sudden disappearance of Mask is undoubtedly a display of irresponsibility. Mask relied on a large quantity of resources provided by the Federation to grow quickly, so he ought to repay the people of the Federation. If a calamity like the recent natural disaster occurs, Mask should be the first one there to suppress it. This is the only way he will ever live up to what the people of the Federation sacrificed for him. Yet Mask publicly turns his back on the outcome of the righteous trial held by the people of the Federation. And with this action throws the sacrifices of the Federation in all of our faces. Jiangling knew there was so much more you can gain from such a broadcast than the words spewing from the television. Someone was highly anxious, and was becoming seriously restless at the disappearance of the mask. She felt the mask was truly something special that the world didn't deserve. When he was present, the world threw all their problems at him. When he wasn't, the world treated him like a trash can, where all accountability was tossed. This army camp is my home, and you're welcome to stay while you recover. But I'm going to warn you now. If you pose any threat to my home, I will destroy you. If it came to it, I'm sure I can break your bones one by one. Xiao assured her that she was wrong. There was no chance that she would be able to beat him. This only excited her. She expected him to one day furnish her the opportunity to prove him wrong. She had wasted enough time making sure he was okay. It was time she got back to work. As she exited the room, her teammates went through the usual 50-question routine that their team seemed famous for. She responded, "Don't know." To each question they threw her away. and there are questions were absurd at best. But some were truly off the rails. This group seemed to be top-notch Gossip Girl material. The only question she had a sure answer to was his name. He's Xiao Qiu. Putting such a name in the Gossip Girl's hands was surely a bad idea. It wouldn't be long before this group figured out exactly who Xiao was. As they watched their captain go, they knew they would need to be on their best behavior over the next few days while she calmed down. There was no way any of them wanted her fury to blow up in their face. As Xiao exited the room, all he knew was that Jiangling mentioned that she was getting back to work. And he would bet all his money, which was none by the way, that she was headed to a secret realm. He looked to be in a terrible state, but in reality, his new heart was pounding with the anticipation of slaughtering monsters. He knew in his current state all he needed to do to recover was to absorb the vital energy of the monsters he'd kill. One of her teammates tried to warn him that he was being reckless. And besides, it was against the rules for him to enter a secret realm without a team. The others insisted that he let him go. If anyone wanted to deal with the secret realms, then by all means that person was a friend indeed. The Supreme Commander chose the perfect time to appear. The stickler for the rules thought the Supreme Commander would be on his side. He explained that he felt that most rules only led to the death of people. And he felt that rules were best when they served the populace. And there's no way you can disagree with me, the Supreme Commander of this army camp. The group snapped to attention. They were behind him fully. The stares between the Supreme Commander and Xiao surely had a deeper meaning. It was highly likely that the commander knew exactly who he was. He ordered Jiangling's group to split up. 2 of them should follow Xiao, and the rest would continue on with their captain. Jiangling waited patiently for her team. She was eager to get back to the battle. The half of the team that would continue accompanying her rushed to her side. They wasted no time informing her of the Supreme Commander's orders. "Captain, that guy you rescued has to have a mental disorder. He wanted to head straight back to a secret realm. We tried to stop him, but the Supreme Commander overheard our conversation. He agreed with him fully and sent the other 2 members of our team off to help the fellow." The 2 were deeply worried about the safety of their teammates. They had never met someone so desperate to run off to their demise. And there was a high chance that he would carry their team down with him. Jiangling reassured them that things weren't as it seemed, and that the guy she saved surely had his own intentions. "There is no way he's that good, Captain." "Captain? Are you listening?" It didn't take Xiao long to regret going along with the decision of the Supreme Commander. Jiangling's teammates were obsessed with their captain. The whole way, all he heard was, "Our captain has an affinity for lightning. Such power is passed down through her lineage. Her father was Commander Jiang. Yes, the very commander who sacrificed himself in Day City. Our captain became a professional at the age of 12. And it only took her to the age of 13 to rise to the 3rd rank. She's the only pupil the Supreme Commander has ever taken under his wing." The mention of the Supreme Commander was the only thing that changed the conversation. They wanted to know what relationship Xiao had with the Supreme Commander. They were perplexed by why their Supreme Commander outfitted Xiao and allowed him to attack a secret realm. Xiao assured them they had absolutely no connections. The 2 had figured there was no way someone like Xiao had connections with their legendary commander. This set them off on another tangent. Their Supreme Commander is a living legend. He may look blind, but it's said that his eyesight is sharper than ordinary people. It's like he has echolocation. He could see in the dark, just like bats. Officially, their Supreme Commander is in the 8th rank. But everyone believes he had reached the 9th rank. But he keeps it to himself because the army camp is where he wants to be. For someone so powerful to sacrifice everything to remain on the front lines is so honorable. Their Supreme Commander was an OG. He had fought side by side with the Mask at the formation of the monster front lines. Their Supreme Commander was part of the reason why humanity survived the monster invasion. He's one of the reasons the repelling monster front lines even exist. Xiao remembered those days fondly. He couldn't pinpoint exactly how long ago that was. At the start of the turnaround of humanity, Mask stepped on the front lines with over 3,000 people who had no idea what he was capable of. At that time, humanity had long been pushed off the front lines, and no human had inhabited the area in ages. The group was attacked from all sides. The monsters came by land, sea and air. They even attacked from the underground. But the repelling army refused to surrender. None of them had any intentions of retreating. Over time, the group shrunk from their initial 3,000 people down to 2,000 people. Eventually, there were only 1,000 of them left. Through this sacrifice, humanity was shown that they could indeed hold their ground against the monster invasion. The soldiers who survived by sheer luck had all grown into powerful professionals. Those individuals spread across the land, each building their own base. Each of those bases eventually became cities of their own, until they eventually became the army camps that spread across the land to this day. And that's exactly how the repelling monster frontlines came into existence. All Jianling's team knew was the look that the Supreme Commander gave Xiao couldn't be mistaken. It had been a while since their weapons had tasted blood, but they would follow him to the end of the earth, if they had to. Xiao burst their bubbles. He would not be needing their assistance. Their job was to guard the portal from the outside. The looks on their faces cut deep. The interior of this particular portal was a dense jungle. He wasted no time switching into his monster form. He truly preferred the reek that the monsters put off. In such a place, he could lose all control and just kill. A group of wolves wasted no time obliging his presence. His injuries would restrict the amount of time he could remain as a monster. Currently, 3 minutes was his max. But 3 minutes would be more than enough to clean up such trash. He wasted no time phasing into battle. The poor wolves stood no chance. Before any of them could make a move, they were all decapitated. As their life energy rose from their bodies and into Xiao, nothing of them remained but stains on the ground. As that energy healed him, the amount of time he could stay in monster form extended. Jianling's team had no faith in Xiao. Half of the Gossip Girl quartet was all that was truly needed. One speculated that he was already a corpse. The other doubted this. He suspected that Xiao was wandering around the outer limits of the secret realm avoiding monster contact. The other believed there was a high chance he was squatting near the portal, waiting for the time to run out in order to escape. Before the Gossip Girls could finish their conversation, Xiao exited the portal. Their faces held no secret of their shock. He had exited in mere minutes. There was no way he had defeated the boss. Xiao reassured them that the boss had been dealt with. At least he hoped it was. Nothing inside felt very boss-like to Xiao. He presented them with the fangs of the boss. They were kinda on the small side, so there was a high chance they wouldn't be very useful. The two gossiped about how he beat Captain Zhang's fastest time by over 13 minutes. There was no way Xiao Qiu's power was double that of their captain. Just like their captain, Xiao insisted they move on to the next secret realm. He completed them in record time, and before long they were moving to the next one, and then the one after that. Jianling's team was not having much luck. Someone was clearing their portals before they had the chance to enter. The group found evidence pointing to the likelihood that they had just missed whoever it was. The footprints they found were the same at each location. So far that day they had visited 5 locations and had been disappointed each time. The second half of the Gossip Girls speculated whether it could be Xiao Qiu's team. In the end, they ruled them out. Whoever was doing this, his power was on a whole nother level. The only explanation left to them was that another army was invading their territory. For another army to steal resources was unheard of. On the surface, Jianling was calm. She even reassured her men that if this was the case, it was a good thing someone was able to clear dungeons so fast. But on the inside, someone was laying down a challenge. And once she found out who, she would rise to the occasion. As each team returned from their expedition, they reported to the management office accounts of their work and handed over any resources obtained. This made it drastically easier for the army camp to keep track of what needed to be done and where, and allowed them to exchange the merits of their soldiers for tangible items. The top reward was a one-on-one training lesson with the Supreme Commander himself. It didn't take Jiangling's group long to figure out who the secret realm thieves were. An assistant in the management office was making it hard not to hear that Zhao's team had completed 17 secret realms in a single outing. But Zhao's new teammates had come with receipts. They were used to dealing with such assistants. This assistant was truly determined. He was digging deep to make sure the outcome landed on his side of the disagreement. The group was sure that being stuck in this office was affecting the assistant's ability to reason with logic, so they turned over their bag and the spoils spread out across the counter. If you want to further certify their authenticity, you're welcome to do just that. But the assistant was satisfied with the evidence presented. He was just having a hard time believing anyone had cleared so many secret realms. From now on, we're calling them dungeons. I'm tired of saying secret realms. So, let's start right now. He was just having a hard time believing anyone had cleared so many dungeons. They introduced him to the man of the hour, the monster who had completed such an extraordinary feat. After hearing such a story, the assistant offered them a rank 6 dungeon that had been floating around the system. It belonged to Army Camp N1, but they had already lost 2 teams and a set of horses to the dungeon. Because of this, that army camp's manpower was essentially depleted. Xiao accepted the request without a second thought. The gossip girl is about to dig himself a deep hole. He made an accusation that Xiao was 2 times stronger than his captain Jiangling without realizing she was standing right behind him. The assistant knew things were about to get bad. He insisted the professional turnaround immediately. Jiangling's team member turned around and instantly began to assure his captain that he was just going with the flow of the conversation. He meant none of it. The list of dungeons confirmed that they were the thieves who had cleared all of the captain's dungeons that day. She asked Xiao if he was the one responsible. He admitted to being the culprit. Now she knew exactly why he extruded such confidence, even while lying on his deathbed. Xiao wondered how long it would take her to let this grudge go. She immediately signed up to participate in the rank 6 dungeon. She wasted no time turning the event into a challenge. She promised Xiao that she would be the one to kill the boss, and immediately turned around and left with her half of the team. The team member who had put his foot in it was totally excited for the competition that awaited. As he handed Xiao the ranked 6th assignment, Xiao instantly understood what was going on. He knew exactly why the system had sent him here. In his other life, an incident had happened on the front lines after the second great obscenity was defeated. Unfortunately, his serious look and side profile reminded one of the gossip girls exactly where he remembered Xiao from. The gossip girl wasted no time doing exactly what he was good at. He went to the Supreme Commander and snitched immediately. He informed the commander that Xiao was the individual who had slaughtered a whole company in Day City. The Supreme Commander used logic to refute such claims. Day City was a long ways away. There was no way that the culprit, a person in custody, had made it to the monster-repelling front lines in such a short time. He assured the captain that originally he felt the same way. He had been observing Xiao all day, and while his face had been destroyed, his hair cut and body matched that assailant perfectly. He assumed that during the great obscenity incident, Xiao had escaped prison. The gossip girl knew his story sounded crazy. But there was one truth he always believed in. Under crazy circumstances, oftentimes coincidences may seem unbelievable. But no matter how unbelievable the conclusion was, most of the time, that conclusion was the truth. The Supreme Commander agreed that the gossip girl's story made perfect sense. He would investigate the situation immediately, and at the rank 6 dungeon at the fork in the river he would confront Xiao about such claims. Too bad the gossip girl thought this situation would lift him up. I really don't see that being the outcome. The next day, the full group stood in front of the portal at the fork in the river. Jiangling's team begged her to allow them to enter also. They used all kinds of dumb logic to accomplish their goals. But Jiangling knew their real goal was to protect her. She thought all their excuses were super lame. But since her men cared for her so much, she gave in. But she made it very clear that they were not to interfere in the competition. This was a one-on-one battle and she wouldn't have them getting involved. Xiao felt Jiangling was a bit much. Her presence was seriously becoming bothersome. The gossip girl was seriously worried. The Supreme Commander had promised to confront Xiao before they entered. Him not showing up didn't bode well for what awaited them inside this dungeon. The dungeon they entered seemed to be a long underground subway tunnel. One of the gossip girls put his sensor abilities to work. All the readings returned normal, so the group shouldn't have any problems proceeding forward. But the others were seriously worried that fighting would be difficult in such a confined space. There was nowhere to take cover or retreat to. Strategically, this dungeon was a bad location. Something ominous headed their way. Whatever it was, had the group's undivided attention. An uncountable number of eyes appeared in the darkness. Before long, a group of crocodiles appeared, rushing forward to each get a piece of the tasty morsels that had entered their domain. Crocodiles in a location like this made zero sense. But regardless, they were in for the time of their lives. Jiangling stepped forward and unleashed the bolt of lightning directly into their midst. The beam that shot from her spear was super powerful. The tunnel was a perfect conductor for her powers. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained. She admitted that it was nothing special. Their surroundings suited her talents perfectly. The gossip girls wasted no time gloating on the behalf of their captain. Xiao shrugged it off. He had no idea why they felt the need to compete. The group had walked for over 10 minutes with no sign of any monsters. They were seriously starting to worry. 2 teams were lost in this dungeon. By now they should have encountered their remains. Xiao didn't understand how Jiangling put up with the BS spewing from her teammate's mouth. And then it hit him. This was most definitely the reason why she left them outside. While they were talking, one of the gossip girls heard something. He immediately put his ear to the wall. Something was headed their way, and it was headed their way fast. A giant crocodile that could barely fit in the tunnel made its way to them. And this mama crocodile wasn't happy. Some of the gossip girls instantly showed their cowardice. They really should have stayed outside. Jiangling couldn't understand why they were scared. Upon closer examination, she realized that the monster had a fear aura. But such a trick was useless against her. She charged in, purple lightning sparking from the tip of her spear. Xiao felt it was time for him to make his presence known. He slammed his sword into the ground. At that very moment, Jiangling killed her crocodile with a single blow to the head. Her attention immediately turned to Xiao. How had she missed such a simple ambush? Xiao twisted his sword and pulled it from the ground. The crocodile burst to the ground in its death throes. Xiao watched on as the light faded from its eyes. All the gossip girls stood around, shocked. They had no idea such a cunning monster was underground. The one they saw with their eyes was simply the distraction. And if it wasn't for the person who henceforth they will refer to as Brother Xiao, they would all be dead. Jiangling wanted to know how he discovered the one that was under the ground. She had no idea it was there. Her attention was fully on the one she could see. She knew that if it wasn't for his actions, all her subordinates would have perished. Xiao explained that it was exactly like she believed. The ground was shaking, so he assumed there had to be a second one underground headed their way. They were in a deep, quiet, isolated subterranean dungeon. It was only natural that you would have monsters attacking you from below. The sensor-tight gossip girl knew this to be impossible. He had had his whole body pressed up against the wall, and could barely sense the second one. And on top of that, Xiao had pinpointed its weak point and had executed a flawless attack. He knew that only a genius was capable of such. Xiao racked his brain for an explanation for his actions. But the explanation he had would be too complicated. The truth was that the frequency generated by this kind of underground vibration is far more distinguishable than the one provoked by a demon god moving in the blink of an eye, which is capable of tearing through space. But there was no way he would be feeding them that line. The bald-headed gossip girl could care less. They had defeated the 2 bosses and he was simply ecstatic. Their actions had saved the lives of who knows how many countless teams that would have perished in this death trap. But he was wrong. Jiangling explained that these 2 most definitely weren't the boss. There was no treasure chest around and the teleportation array hadn't reopened. All of them instantly understood the gravity of their situation. If the two monsters that had just attacked them wasn't the boss, what exactly did they face deeper in this dungeon? Jiangling ordered her men to stay close. Under no circumstances were they to fall behind. All of them had long faces. They really hated burdening their captain. As she walked away, she reassured them that they should straighten up. This is only what you expected when one was part of a team. Her words alone deepened all of their bonds. At the end of the tunnel was an ominous door. Nothing good could be awaiting them on the other side. Jiangling ordered that her and Xiao would enter, and her team would wait outside. All of them instantly snapped to attention at this order. None of them was interested in holding their captain or their new brother Xiao back. They made their captain promise that she would come back safely. She shrugged them off like she usually did, and her and Xiao began to open the door. Dust obscured the entrance as the two walked in. As soon as the two stepped through, the door slammed down behind them. They entered the tunnel, wondering what foe awaited them ahead. They wouldn't have to wait long. Something with a light tread approached them. A humanoid crocodile stepped forward. They both knew that the more a monster appeared as a human, the higher the danger would be. The crocodilian wanted to fight, and he wanted to fight now. Jiangling wouldn't disappoint. She headed in at a full charge, lightning spear at the ready. She hated being underestimated, and for that, this crocodilian would pay. Xiao was impressed. At that angle, if the boss bit down on her spear, it would be pierced through. That was unless it used his hands to deflect the blow. And to Jiangling's surprise, the crocodilian grabbed her spear out the air and slung her against the ground. Xiao was impressed the crocodilian had one-upped his expectation. Jiangling was forced to use her ace in the hole. She pointed her pistol at her foe's face and released a lightning beam that removed half of the creature's entire upper half. But the situation was about to get very interesting. But before that, Xiao wondered if her fighting style always involved such risks. She explained that there was no other way to gain results in life. He agreed. Shocking her, for most people would preach on about how life was sacred and you should cherish it. But upon examining the corpse, Jiangling discovered that the humanoid monster was actually a human. The person inside the beast was named Christian. He was a level 6 professional stationed in the N1 army camp. His team was the first to disappear. How in the world did he become a monster? This dungeon was a nightmare, and she was determined to get to the bottom of it. A group of what she could only assume was other professionals headed in their direction. They spewed cool words about how Jiangling would take the ones on the left. And Xiao replied, "Leave the ones on the right to me." The two dashed forward, ready to put a beat down on their foes. Jiangling leaped into the air, building the momentum needed to come crashing to the ground with a devastating blow that caused all the crocodilians to lose their footing. She immediately followed up with a devastating spin attack that took 4 of her foes out with a single hit. A crocodilian used this opportunity to launch a sneak attack in her blind spot. But Jiangling was no slouch. She blocked his blow and stabbed him through the gut, as purple lightning bolts rained down all around her. Her attacks were seriously devastating. The former human professionals had gained great strength and agility from becoming monsters. But the side effect of losing their intelligence countered all gains. In the end, they were just harmless monsters. Jiangling noticed that Xiao was taking just a tad bit longer to finish his enemies. As she glanced over, he was taking the head off of one particular crocodilian, while dodging a blow from behind from another. He wasted no time finishing his second foe as he turned around and unleashed a barrage to bring his battle to a conclusion. Jiangling was meticulous when it came to her job. She had verified that every single one of the crocodilians they had just slain were each one of the missing professionals from Army Camp N1. The remaining crocodilians guarded an altar, their ancient and primal instincts urging them to protect the sacred space. Jiangling understood that there was a high chance that they were going to summon something deadly. The crocodilians wasted no time praying to whatever god they saw fit to worship. Jiangling wondered if it was worth it to let them finish summoning whatever creature they were trying to bring forth. But as the ominous aura radiated from the center pillar of the altar, the eyes that appeared in the air made her decision for her. She hated anything that caused her to hesitate, so she dashed forward, launching her spear through the crocodilians, causing the ritual to end. Xiao knew exactly what the presence was, for after all, it had eyes only for him. The crocodilians were trying to summon a demon god from the void. Xiao was sure you could call them old acquaintances. Or maybe, since this was a different life, they had never met. The two groups rendezvoused outside the dungeon. The gossip girls wasted no time praising their captain, but now they had praise for their new big brother Xiao also. They were truly the cheerleaders they feared they would become. The group wanted to know how big the boss was. Was it a fearsome foe? But their captain shot them down. She had no time for idle chatter. Getting the new intel back to the Supreme Commander as fast as possible was of the utmost priority. Her team was seriously puzzled by what could have happened inside the dungeon. The Supreme Commander wasted no time making his presence known. The snitch was ecstatic. This was going to propel him to greater heights. But the newbie wondered why the Supreme Commander had brought a full law enforcement team. He reassured all of them that this situation only involves Xiao Qiu. Or should I call you the perpetrator of the Day City massacre? The gossip girls instantly jumped to their 50 questions a minute routine. You're joking, right? Why would someone caught in Day City be on the repelling monster front? Big brother Xiao doesn't seem like that type of person. You would think a snitch would know the perfect time to reveal themselves. But it seemed this one was oblivious. His captain looked at him with disdain. Xiao wasted no time admitting it. He was that very same Xiao Qiu. And the snitch felt vindicated. His analysis was spot on. Xiao wanted to know if their intentions were to arrest him and transport him to Star City. The Supreme Commander explained that the federal laws insisted that he arrests any fugitives on the run, no matter where they may be found. And the atonement camp was the only place suitable to keep a criminal. That was all according to federal law. But none of those laws had anything to do with Army Camp N3. The law enforcement agents were stunned. The Supreme Commander went on to explain that in the same circumstances, he would have likely made the same choices. Actually, that's not true. I would have burned that entire building to the ground. He went on to explain that if everyone was like Xiao, this world would be a much better place. And that this was the end of this situation, and no one would speak of it farther. Otherwise, he would have to invite Xiao to leave his army camp. Jiangling asked her mentor for a sidebar. Her teammates wondered what was going on. They had never seen her so anxious. They could ask Xiao, but after what one of their teammates had just done to him, they thought better of it. Jiangling explained what had come of all the team members who had perished in the dungeon. And above all else, she relayed the information about the altar with the ominous presence. She inquired whether the Supreme Commander knew anything about such altars. He explained that it was the altar of a monster god. She was stun-locked. She had no idea monsters had gods. There are countless teams just like yours on the repelling monster front, who clear out dungeons every single day. And tens of thousands of dungeons are cleared out every single year. And with all that, humanity hasn't made a single bit of headway. We're nowhere near ending this conflict. Do you ever wonder why that is? It's because of the source. Our actions are simply a waste of time. We are only dealing with the symptoms of the issue. If we continue to blindly throw ourselves at the dungeons, nothing is truly ever going to change. Humanity needs to focus on extinguishing the source of this problem, or this war will rage on forever. And the monster gods. Yes, Jiangling, the monster gods is the source. Or more precise, they're the owners of the altars you saw in the dungeon. The monster gods are powerful beings who live outside this world. The calamities paled in comparison. These beings sit in the infinite world and call themselves gods. Some believe the reason the repelling monster front has so many dungeons is because it's closer than any other point on Earth to the location where the monster gods reside. A tiny bit of their aura is all it takes for dungeons to endlessly appear in our world, and the great calamities are nothing more than a fart on the wind for them. If all this was true, Jiangling didn't understand what was the point of all her toiling and hard work. But don't think humanity is a helpless babe in their presence. We've killed our fair number of gods. Or should I say, one particular man has killed his fair share of gods? Jiangling knew her mentor was referring to Mask. Finding an altar is the first signs that a wave of destruction is headed our way. A literal sea of monsters. I hope I'm wrong, but such signs foreshadow a monster god awakening from its slumbers. A sea of monsters will cause all dungeons to burst, and from them a wave of monsters will spread out. In a blink of an eye, all the progress that humanity has made will be washed away. The last time such an event happened, Mask was here to limit the toll humanity had to pay. Without him, who knows how big a price the repelling monster front would have to pay. Going forward, humanity's strategy would change. The professionals would stop clearing out dungeons in preparation for what was to come. And the Supreme Commander was worried exactly what that would be this time around. He ordered Jiangling to rest. She couldn't continue on like a machine. After all, in these times, any day could be her last. Jiangling tried to explain to her master that she didn't need rest. But he changed the subject. The Supreme Commander ordered them to take Xiao with them as they delivered the news throughout the army camps of the repelling monster front. With a smile on his face, the Supreme Commander ordered that since Xiao may be recognized, that they should prepare a disguise to cover his features. Find him a mask to wear. This old man truly thinks he's funny. An armored train raced across the desert. It was moving so fast I don't believe anything would be wise to get in its path. In the back of the train, Captain Jiangling was busy polishing her staff while practicing the art of meditation, while her teammates were playing an intense game of cards. Xiao was watching them all while looking like someone familiar indeed. The bald-headed gossip girl assured Xiao that these trains were their most reliable source of transportation. They may look funny and maybe nowhere as fast as trains on rails, but they're capable of passing through forests and mountains. If there's not a road, it'll just make one. The other gossip girls chastised him. For, he says this line to every new person that rides the trains. They will be at Army Camp M2 very soon. The new member of their team didn't understand why they couldn't just use the radio to spread the news. Why was this information so important they had to use something as backwards as hand delivering a letter? The other gossip girl explaining that the documents were most likely top secret, and no one needed them falling into the enemy's hands. The new recruit thought this was bogus. Everyone was acting like the monsters could listen in on their radio conversations or worse, spy on them over the internet. They all heard something approaching at a fast rate. The bald-headed gossip girl spotted it first, and informed everyone that there was an armored vehicle approaching to their right. Upon further examination, a group of monsters were chasing them down. Why in the world was Army Camp M2 not capable of clearing the dungeon? Were they really in such a state that their dungeons were releasing monsters into the world? In secret realms across the world, a universal rule dictates that if a dungeon remains uncleared within the allotted time, the imprisoned monsters within will shatter their seals and break free. This rule applies to various realms, from the repelling monster front to areas inhabited by humans. The dire consequences of failing to clear the dungeons in a timely manner became evident a century ago in the human world. As dungeons emerged throughout the globe, the failure to eradicate them swiftly resulted in a rapid deterioration of their influence, leading to their abrupt collapse. This cataclysmic event caused countries, religions, entire regions, and governing bodies to fade into mere whispers of history, leaving behind nothing but remnants of their existence. The armored vehicle sped along as the archer in the back endlessly shot down wolves that were pursuing them. His current count was over 30. He couldn't understand what the leaders of the Federation were up to. Countless monsters had escaped, and they've yet to receive reinforcements. He had been so desperate to kill the wolves that he wasn't paying attention to his ammo supply. As soon as he was out, a wolf took the opportunity to take him down just as he knew he was surely dead. Something knocked the wolf out of the sky. They were being saved. An armored train was coming to their rescue. But a few bullets went astray, taking out their tires and flipping them just as a giant bird was launching an attack from the sky. The professionals on the train wasted no time destroying the bird of prey. The soldiers of Army Camp M2 were shocked someone had came to their rescue. As the train steamed on ahead, A side door opened and our professionals rushed out to assist the downed M2 soldiers. The M2 army soldiers warned them away. There were too many monsters for any one group to take out. But this group would never back down from a challenge. They rushed in and began decimating their foes. It didn't matter how many came, they would cut them all down. From watching them fight, the soldiers realized that this group had unstoppable leaders. Before long, the battle was over and it was time to carefully process the scene. The wounded needed to be taken care of and the resources needed to be harvested. The soldiers made their way over to their saviors. They knew exactly who they were dealing with, as the captain's reputation preceded her. Controlling lightning, using a lance and wearing a mask were all signs they were in the presence of greatness. But they didn't know that Army Camp M3 had another super powerful professional. Xiao ignored them, but the captain's teammates jumped to the occasion to introduce him. His name is Xiao Qiu and he's the newest member of our army. Well, we're very thankful for his assistance. The group wanted a rundown on what exactly was going on in this part of the front lines. Their group originally had 15 team members, but they were all that was left. They were following orders to clear out dungeons, and they didn't expect to run into monsters. Their story didn't sound good enough, so they decided to be honest with their saviors. Something is going on with the surveillance of the dungeons. We don't know how, but a lot of them broke without anyone knowing. We weren't the only team to leave our city. Our camp is truly in trouble if those other teams ran into hardships similar to ours. Jiangling requested more information about the dungeon seals being broken. As I'm sure you are aware, the rate in which dungeons have been appearing has increased significantly recently. And it seems some of those dungeons have already failed. Truthfully, we did know that a few of the dungeons weren't very stable at all, but for so many to break so soon, it's just too much for us. This turned Jiangling's mind towards the Sea of Monsters. Was this truly a precursor to that event? They had only visited 5 camps so far, and Jiangling couldn't believe that things had deteriorated to this degree. Captain Jiangling had a bad feeling about Army Camp M2. They needed to get there ASAP. At Army Camp M2, 2 lookouts were discussing the goings-ons of the camp. In the last 2 days, over 30 teams had left, but so far, only 10 had returned. Everyone was truly worried for the safety of their comrades. Everyone knew there was a high possibility that they might be in the next group to head out that would never return. Their conversation would have to be put on hold for a later time, as it seemed the camp had company inbound. But as the lookout was signaling the train, the unthinkable happened. The train plowed headlong through the wall of the army camp. A dead professional was launched out the side, dagger still in hand. A locust humanoid emerged. Army Camp M2 was being invaded. A horde of beasts rushed out of the cargo hold and immediately attacked anything in sight. It was literally a plague of locusts. Before long, the army camp was being set ablaze. The locusts were everywhere. The leader stood on the train and watched the city burn around him, the whole time chirping orders to the others. Before they had even arrived, Captain Jiangling suspected the camp was under attack. It truly didn't make sense. It had been a long time since monsters were so bold that they attacked army camps directly. But the times were changing, and they were changing fast. She feared that the camp's commander had already succumbed to the horde of dungeon monsters. In these times, a 7th-ranked professional would hardly be enough. Even a 9th-ranked professional might even succumb to such pressure. To her displeasure, she wasn't proved wrong. The camp was already in the process of burning. SOS signals were being sent out in all directions. They needed help, and they needed it bad. But before the train could get them into range, the news of the death of their commander and the fall of Army Camp M2 was broadcasted over the radio. The camp was burning at an alarming rate. Who would have thought Army Camp M2 would fall? The captain knew that this wouldn't be the last army camp to fall. She ordered them not to change their direction and to keep moving towards the camp. In times like this, rescuing as many people as possible was of the utmost importance. The M2 soldier couldn't believe this was happening. Their problem started the day those big wigs decided to disregard everything that the masks did for us, forcing him to retreat to who knows where. These monsters are truly acting like the mask isn't here to hold them accountable. Everybody on the train had a long face. The bald-headed team member felt it was his responsibility to lighten the mood. He had noticed something real cool. Zhao's build and silhouette was very close to that of the mask. And with the mask on, it was uncanny how much he resembled the legend. Now that you mention it, his silhouette isn't the only thing that looks like the mask. You're right. He's literally the mask's doppelganger. They asked Xiao if he was truly the mask, without a hint that he wasn't being serious. He replied yes. I am the mask. For a moment, everyone stood still. And then they all laughed at such a great joke. They asked for his autograph and made him promise he would meet their family members. The captain was the only one that truly believed his words. She insisted they would have to see if he truly lived up to his name. As they got closer, the culprits of the downfall of the army camp came into view. A swarm of locusts were headed in their direction. They were chasing a group of survivors pleading for help. The captain wasted no time lighting them up with her pistol. And without a second thought, she launched her javelin. It pierced through a few of them before it exploded, taking out so many, the rest retreated. The soldiers sat down exhausted and relieved. They immediately showed their gratitude. If it wasn't for this group of professionals, there was no doubt they would be dead. The captain still held on to a sliver of hope for the army camp. She asked the group of survivors for an update on its situation. They assured her that the camp was completely gone. Everyone there was dead, even their commander. Army Camp M2 now belongs to the monsters. He told them about a locust, just like the ones in the sky. But this particular one was humanoid. It literally walked up to their commander and ripped his head off. And after that, it held on to his head like it was a trophy. The lead soldier begged them not to head any closer to the camp. The commander knew something was off the moment she laid eyes on these three. For starters, what soldiers fall to the ground the moment they're saved, while civilians still stood on their feet. As he continued to inch closer to persuade her not to go, she pointed her spear towards his neck. She explained that this group were convicts from the atonement camp. The three were shocked. Her teammates tried to talk her down at a time like this. What did that truly matter? They continued to lie directly to her face. But she explained that she knew that they had killed the professionals escorting this group of civilians. For one thing, none of them could even hold their weapons appropriately. The leader was missing the tip of his ear. It was most definitely a bullet wound he received while killing the true escorts. At this, the two retards in the back attacked. They lost their heads before getting in range. You think the leader had sense and was running away. But instead he was looking for hostages to save his life. So Xiao parted him of his head. The M2 soldiers were amazed by her deduction skills. They had wondered why they didn't recognize the three. It was time for them to head out. There was truly nothing left for them to gain by heading to the camp. But it turns out they had a bigger problem. The train's boiler had burned out. They had stressed it too much to reach this location as fast as possible. One of the civilians raised her hand. She could fix that problem in a jiffy. And she was true to her word. In a blink of the eye, she had the train back up and running. There was no doubt they had a high-level mechanic on their hands. But she explained that she was only a student and all of them were the true high-level individuals here. Her name was Evelyn Clark and she strived to become the best mechanic ever. But if it wasn't for the skills of Evelyn Clark, they wouldn't be back on course hurtling across the sand bound for their next destination. If only the group could come to a decision on exactly where that was. The first step in the process of deciding where to go next had already been completed. Everyone had fully given up on Army Camp M2. There was nothing left there but death. The more distance they put between them and it, the safer they all would be. They had two choices moving forward. Their best options were Army Camps L4 or Y5. The closest camp also turned out to be the one with the higher risk. The survivors on board the train insisted the monsters had launched their attack from the direction of Army Camp L4. In order for them to make it to that particular army camp, they will have to pass near the north gate of M2. Such a risk was just too high. So the consensus was instead of traveling 2 days to L4, they would attempt a 5-day journey to Y5. Xiao was fully against this plan. He insisted they should head to Army Camp L4. But the person who made the final decision turned out to be none other than Evelyn Clark. She informed everybody that the train only had enough fuel to travel for 2 days. And with that, their destination was determined. And they would have to take the risk that came with it. For running out of gas on the repelling monster front was tantamount to death. Xiao was waiting for the questioning brigade to come interrogate him. They would want to know why he insisted that they steer clear of Y5. Jiangling arrived precisely as he had foreseen. Xiao was a warrior, not a mechanic, so being aware of the train's fuel shortage was beyond his scope. Jiangling yearned to understand the rationale behind his choice. According to his memories from his previous life, the Y area marked the initial downfall, followed by vast stretches of land progressively disconnecting from the outside world, one after another. Despite his swift arrival, he couldn't rescue the Y area, for it had already succumbed entirely, transforming into a nightmarish playground. But seeing as he wasn't interested in answering, she changed the subject. Her father had been his arresting officer. She was truly curious what type of person he was. Righteous. He was truly righteous. His words aligned perfectly with what she'd been able to piece together about him. Army Camp M2 was a disaster zone. The locusts wasted no time burning it to the ground and consuming any and everything that was edible. The humanoid locusts' underlings were relentless. If he didn't teach them manners, who would? As he read his paper, signs of humanity came to his ear. Captain Jiangling's train was not doing a good job being discreet. The Locust King wasted no time. He charged his body. A blue glow radiated across his entire being. And with all his might, he shot into the air. He couldn't stand the existence of humans and would destroy them at all costs. The full swarm took to the air, leaving behind the wreckage of Army Camp M2. All the civilians were worried. This would be the most crucial point in their journey. The professionals did their best to reassure them, but truthfully it was little comfort. The locust swarm was so dense that one of the professionals mistook it for smoke rising from the destroyed city of M2. But the civilians had seen that swarm firsthand, and to their eyes, it was nothing but death. And worst of all, the Locust King was among them. Captain Jiangling knew her skill level in and out. And if M2's commander couldn't take down this monster, what exactly was her chances? If they didn't take this thing down, no one would be making it safely to Army Camp L4. As she stared out towards the Locust King, hatred for all monsters radiated throughout her body. But she wasn't the only one who felt such hatred. The Locust King was disgusted by the mere sight of humans and would destroy all of humanity. He reached out to one of his underlings and relieved it of his leg. He wasted no time locking onto his target and releasing his makeshift missile. His aim was true as the leg slammed into the train, forcing it to lose control as it headed towards a cliff. As the civilians were tossed around the train cart, Evelyn Clark was ejected into the open. But Xiao and Jiangling followed behind, rescuing her as they turned their sight to stopping the train from plummeting over the cliff. The two rushed to the train and within seconds had corrected its trajectory and forced it to a complete stop. Evelyn Clark was amazed. A 10,000-ton armored train hurling towards the edge of a cliff was turned around by two individuals. Jiangling got to work. She first ordered everyone to defend the train at all costs. Next, she ordered Evelyn Clark to get the train back up and operating as soon as possible. She hated situations like this. But the reality was the lives of civilians were insignificant. If they lost the armored train, they would be stuck on the repelling monster front. So, the train was their top priority. It came before anyone else's well-being. She stood there resolutely waiting for the destruction that was headed their way. She threw her spear into the midst of the swarm, lightning arcing from it as it hurtled across the sky. When it reached its pinnacle, it exploded like a firework, sending its sparks in all directions. Not a single locust within its radius was left alive. She shot into the sky, retrieving her spear, and began to decimate anything in her path. The soldiers on the ground stirred on, hoping the captain had what it took to save them from their plight. The soldiers of Army Camp N2 were in shock of her pure skill. Their commander would have had a hard time producing half the damage she was forcing upon the swarm of locusts. The bald-headed gossip girl wasted no time reinforcing the legend that was his captain. He insisted that his captain was truly rank 6. But she wouldn't be that way for long. But it was time for them to put their idle chatter to an end, as a few fish had escaped the net, and it was time for them to get to work. The Locust King stirred out across the battlefield, relishing in the sight of destruction. It was now time for the battle to start in earnest. Jiamling blasted from the ground and forced her spear through the center of the locust's head. Its speed was so fast that she simply phased through. What she perceived to be her target was simply an afterimage it left in its wake. The Locust King proceeded to demonstrate exactly what she was up against, finishing with a blow that sent her flying to the ground. She crashed into the ground with such force that a crater rippled outwards from her point of contact. The Locust King wasted no time diving in to finish what he started. His hands shifted into a scythe as he attacked with full force. Jiamling raised her spear in time to block the blow. But it wasn't enough as his sickle slipped across her spear, inching its way towards her skull. Fast duds could be heard headed in her direction. Xiao burst in, his impact so great it sent the Locust King flying through a grove of trees. He reassured Jiamling that he had everything under control and that she should head back to protect the train. There was no way she would ever forgive him if he died on her. The Locust King slid to a stop in the center of the grove. As Xiao casually walked into the clearing, the Locust King informed him that he radiated their scent. Xiao informed him that he was neither a human nor a monster, but he guessed it would be more fitting to use the term monster when describing him. Xiao was seriously tired of being trapped in his human form. Both him and Blood Raven had been longing to unleash their true power. Zhao's presence struck fear in the heart of the Locust King. That fear forced it to initiate the first attack. The ground rippled from the impact, forcing boulders up and outwards. When the smoke cleared, Xiao had simply ate the blow. He started to worry that his opponent wouldn't live up to his expectations. The Locust King stepped back and launched a second attack in his direction. Xiao caught the blow in his hand, and informed the Locust King that it was his turn to do the punching. The Locust King was infuriated by this human posing as a monster. He had no choice but to wipe this scum from the face of existence. Blood Raven smashed into his face, destroying the Locust King once and for all. Xiao truly wished the battle could have went on longer. It had been so long since he was last able to just let loose. But sometimes that's just the way things are. A god-chosen monster has been defeated. This monster is a demon god. Treacherous wisdom. The monster blade Blood Raven has absorbed the blood of the god Treacherous Wisdom, beginning the monster blade Blood Raven's second evolution. As the energy of a demon god rose up and swirled around Blood Raven, an ominous presence stared out longingly from within the blade. The monster blade Blood Raven has gained a new ability, Crow Tide. Ability description. The monster blade Blood Raven can morph into a sea of crows that pour towards surrounding enemies, sucking them dry of blood. Xiao was truly impressed, for Blood Raven had taken another step on the path to power. Back at the train, the locust swarm had been completely decimated. Their counterattack had been so successful there was not a single civilian casualty. But Jiangling's team knew their captain very well. She was truly worried about the safety of Xiao. Jiangling really hoped he had not bitten off more than he could chew, as she was regretting her decision to abandon his side. Xiao casually walked from the grove no worse for wear. Everyone was truly ecstatic. Bald-headed gossip girl rushed to his side. He wanted to know if Xiao had succeeded in destroying the monster. Xiao had just defeated a monster who had easily took out a 7th-ranked commander. This could only mean that Xiao's strength exceeded that of the 7th rank. With the destruction of the swarm, the train could safely resume its journey to Army Camp L4. The mood aboard the train had greatly improved. But an air of uncertainty lingered as the future was still undetermined. The two strongest professionals set apart from the other passengers. Jiangling thanked Xiao for saving her life, but he shrugged it off for it wasn't a big deal. She noticed the similarity between him and the legendary mask. Both of them grew by leaps and bounds, leaving normal humans behind as they shot to the stars. Evelyn Clark reported the bad news that the radio equipment was malfunctioning. So far, they hadn't been able to get in contact with the closest army camp. Captain Zhang insisted she stop beating around the bush and give them the full story. She believed something or someone was blocking their radio signals. Not only were they not able to send signals, they couldn't receive them either. They were now isolated from all of humanity. An island floating in an ocean of nothingness. Xiao's system was giving him a daunting task with a reward that was equally frightening. Monster's Path. Main task. A sea of monsters. Task description. The descent of an unprecedented sea of monsters is imminent on the repelling monster front. Every last corner will be scorched by a war led by the monster god himself. Task objective. Exterminate the sea of monsters. Task reward. Partial evolution into a demon god. Xiao wasn't sure such a path was something he was interested in taking. As the next day rolled around, the train finally received a transmission from Army Camp L4. Evelyn Clark was sure there wasn't a signal yesterday. Captain Jiang believed her and felt something nefarious was afoot. Evelyn Clark wasted no time explaining their situation to the army camp. They had received her signal and advised them to make their way to Army Camp L4 post-haste, and they would receive protection upon arrival. The news was a blessing to the train. As their fuel supply was severely depleted, they would have no problems refueling and deciding their next course of action moving forward. Everybody aboard the train was ecstatic. L4 will be a safe place for all the civilians to start a new life. And the soldiers were very much looking forward to some R&R. But before their new hopes and dreams could settle in, another message came over the radio receiver. It informed them not to trust Army Camp L4, and that the army camp had been taken over by monsters. Everyone was stunned by this. Up until now, none of them had ever seen an intelligent monster. But the captain disagreed. In recent days, she has seen plenty of signs of this. The crocodiles and their ritual totem, and the Locust King's Trojan horse. At the very least, those were two signs of monsters imitating humans. The captain took over the radio. She insisted the whistleblowers give them more information about the army camp. They explained that they were survivors of Army Camp L4. 2 days ago, a large number of monsters overran the camp. The monsters that attacked them were intelligent and used trickery and deception to enter the camp. Because of this, their commander and 3/8 rank professionals all perished. They insisted that they should not believe Army Camp L4. They had set up a temporary camp northeast of the army camp, and passed over the coordinates so the train team could reach them. After such news, the captain felt it best not to talk over the radio any longer. And the choice was most definitely a good one, seeing as how whoever on the other end was desperate to get in contact with them. They continued to transmit over and over, begging for them to respond. This was a tough decision. There was no way of knowing who was telling the truth. Everybody on board the train had their own opinion. Some believed the temporary camp story, and some believed they were the monsters. In the end, the captain asked Zhao's for his thoughts. His opinion was they were both lying, and there would be a trap at either location. In his past existence, the rapid downfall of the repelling monster front was attributed to certain monsters being enlightened by the deceptive wisdom of the demon god. This enlightenment bestowed upon them intelligence and cunning that rivaled those of human warriors in every aspect. Guided by the crafty god's chosen ones, the monsters unleashed havoc. They adeptly disguised themselves, deceived humans, and even enslaved them, turning them into their obedient followers and compelling them to commit countless crimes. Humans, who had never regarded monsters as intellectual equals, were taken by surprise and gradually lost control over vast territories. Land after land slipped from their grasp, leaving them at a disadvantage. Xiao didn't understand what was going on. The circumstances of events in this life were starting to deviate severely from that of his last. In his previous life, Army Camp L4 should have held on a bit longer. In that life, they were a beacon for all of humanity. There could only be one reason for this. Because Xiao had chosen the monster's path, he currently wasn't in the void putting a beat down on the demon god treacherous wisdom, which meant it had extra resources to spare, drastically escalating the circumstances of this war. For a second, he doubted himself. Were his actions making things worse? But then he remembered the end of his previous life. Nothing he did could make anything worse than the extinction of all of humanity. Being short on fuel forced the occupants of the train to make hard decisions. In this case, the group was forced to rendezvous with the survivors at the temporary camp. To everyone's surprise, the campsite was indeed built by humans, and the survivors of Camp L4 came out to greet them. But that's where all the good news ended. The monsters had turned the whole camp into their puppets. They had been given a deal they didn't refuse. If they turned traitor against humanity, they would be allowed their freedom. The group lured unsuspecting travelers into their trap, and once captured, they would be delivered on a silver platter to Army Camp L4. Unlucky for them, Xiao didn't tolerate traitors. He unleashed Blood Raven's new attack, slaughtering them before they can even move. They cleared out the entire camp, but in the process lost 4 members, and Evelyn Clark took it to heart. If she hadn't brought them along to help her collect goods, they would still be alive. None of their words could stop her from holding this guilt in her heart. We had heard stories of humanity turning against each other during the Dark Period, resorting to deceit and conspiracy in order to survive. Yet I never imagined that I would personally experience such a day. After gathering supplies from the campsite, we held a discussion and ultimately decided to make our way towards Army Camp A1. It served as a fortified core of the repelling monster front, surpassing the strength of Army Camp L4 and being akin to the front's capital. If even this camp were to fall, it would signify the dissolution of the repelling monster front altogether. Another cause for concern lies in the situation of my mentor and Army Camp hashtag. Based on our prior experiences, Army Camp hashtag should be relatively distant and untouched by the encroaching sea of monsters. But who truly knows for certain? The hashtags are there to protect the identity of her camp in case she's captured. Jiangling wouldn't want sensitive information from her logs falling into the wrong hands. Treacherous wisdom was weak in comparison to the other monster gods, but he made up for this weakness with his intelligence. Its goals from the very start were to use humanity's methods of treachery to extinguish humanity. Worse than that was, Xiao had no way of destroying treacherous wisdom, for he was a master of disguise. He could literally kill every other monster god, and treacherous wisdom would still not show his face. Blood Raven's growth was causing him to garnish attention from others. Jiangling's attention was caught by the magnificent blade, and she wished to know its name. Xiao explained that its name was Flying Raven, and it was a gift from a friend. Jiangling exclaimed, if only she had friends like that. Xiao wondered if Yan Sisi would still think of him as a friend after killing her sister. Xiao had experienced countless situations where his strength had caused him to betray his friends in the pursuit of justice. It was best for him not to let his mind linger on such subjects, as you were rarely ever able to change their outcomes. The situation in the repelling monster front was drastically deteriorating. As they traveled to Army Camp A1, they were flanked on all sides by beasts headed in the same direction. On one side, a horde of walking beasts of every species could be seen trudging through the desert, and the sky was filled with countless flying mobs. But luckily, a heavily armored tank brigade was headed in for action. Army Camp A1 had a seriously unstoppable defense. The tanks wasted no time dealing with the monsters. In a matter of minutes, the threat had been neutralized. The train was brought to a stop by a group of armored Humvees. The bald-headed gossip girl wasted no time presenting identification. But none of that mattered. In the current state of the world, with treachery at its highest, trust was a hard-earned commodity. The group from N3 was shocked. They hadn't expected this at all. A soldier from A1 with a giant bastard sword on his back insists that they were traitors. They tried to explain that they had gone through so much to get to Army Camp A1. But after all, that's exactly what a traitor would say. It turns out the circumstances were just bad. Since they were being flanked by monsters on both sides, They obviously looked like traitors. But luckily someone was there who recognized them and was willing to vouch for their presence. The Supreme Commander looked like he had been to the end of the world and back, and on that journey, he had lost a lot of people who were dear to him. Basically, he did not look good at all. The group was transported to Army Camp A1's quarantine facility. The Army Camp's prison was literally given a fancy new name. The prison/redemption camp had been modified to secretly store suspected human traitors from the outside world. The facility was quietly quarantining a large number of outside survivors. In Army Camp A1's eyes, if they are able to filter out the traitors amongst the true comrades, imprisoning their future friends would still be worth it. The Supreme Commander spoke to Jiangling through prison bars. He relieved her of her major worries, informing her that N3 had evacuated to A1 before the Sea of Monsters began. Her home was an empty shelf full of traps, just in case the monsters tried to make it their home. The situation on the front lines had to be in a dire state. For the higher-ups to surrender countless cities, such a choice had to come at an astronomical cost. I hear on your way here you ran into a group of human traitors. A1 has been systematically eradicating such groups. But I hope you understand, because they have seen such a large number of traitorous army camps, that it's only logical that you traveling in front of a horde of monsters is highly suspicious. Hence the reason why they have taken the precautions of putting you in here. Jiangling brought up the subject of the intelligent monsters. And her mentor explained that that subject will lead us to monster gods again. And since he's already told her everything he knew about monster gods, there was no point in continuing the conversation. But he believed she knew the answers she was looking for already. As the Supreme Commander departed, he reassured her that the army camp had a severe shortage of manpower. So, it wouldn't be long before she was freed and sent out on the battlefront to protect humanity. Jiangling wondered what he meant by she might already know the answers she was seeking. Xiao was spending his time in prison wisely. He was coming up with a plan that would change the course of the Sea of Monster incident in the favor of humanity. So far his plan involved an inactive volcano that was currently being used as a hot spring. But the TV interrupted his planning. What looked to be a bunch of high-level traitors were having a news conference about how they had come to the front lines personally to orchestrate the turnaround of humanity. They were reassuring the fighters on the front line that the Federation had their back and was here to lead them to salvation. Jiangling couldn't understand why the Federation felt the need to strut around in everyone's face. The only good thing about these Federation members were that the weakest among them was rank 8. So if they would roll up their sleeves and get on the battlefield, they truly would be useful. But she was sure that would never happen. Within hours, the two of them were freed from prison. Their quarantine had been cancelled and they were officially being given a full squadron to command. Time was of the essence. Their weapons were immediately returned to them. They were being deployed before the day was out. Xiao really didn't care what the reasoning behind this turn of events was. He had a plan to orchestrate, and there were things he needed to complete it. First, he asked for the assistance of the civilian Evelyn Clark. His handler had no problem with this. His job was to equip them and get them on the battlefield as soon as possible. To no one's surprise, they were being handed a group of prisoners as their squadron. Turns out the redemption camp was the only men left who could be assigned. All the professionals had long departed for the battlefield. The handler tried to insist that there being over 100 of them was a good thing. They could command them as if they were sending lambs to the slaughter. But Jiangling didn't see this as a crutch. To her it was a bane. The redemption squadron had little fighting ability and zero morale. And none of them had the ability to follow orders. Having so many of them would only lead to chaos. The handler, being used to solving problems, furnished her with a box of walkie-talkies. Like that was going to whip the prisoners into shape. While Jiangling complained, Xiao loved the idea. The walkie-talkies were exactly what he needed for his plan to come to fruition. The handler was happy that someone understood him. Because of the strength the two wielded, they were being given privilege. The privilege to choose where they died. The handler explained that the northwest perimeter of the front lines were in such a bad state that the higher-ups had already conceded it to the monsters. Their privilege allowed them to pick an area far from that battlefront. With a smile on his face, Xiao announced that that sounded like a good place to start. Zhao's actions had confused the handler. He figured he should explain in more detail what was happening in that region of the monster front. You're requesting to be sent to the most dangerous area in the repelling monster front. That area is being controlled by monsters on 3 sides, and humanity is barely hanging on to the repelling monster front side. Xiao explained that that was exactly the reason why he chose it. But in exchange for them going there, he was going to need a few extra items. He was going to need 20 military maps of the area and a very particular number of miniature nuclear devices. He almost forgot he also needed tripwires. Jiangling backed Zhao's decision. She inherently understood exactly what Zhao's plans were. The handler had warned them that he wouldn't be taking any responsibility for their failures. He promised to do his best to get the items requested. And if they were all done here, they should take their teams and head to the transport fleet. They will be sent off to the battlefront immediately. Zhao's plan was simple. He needed willing soldiers, and the best way to turn the trash he received into what he needed was to forge it in the pits of hell. By dropping the prisoners into an unwinnable situation, they'll be forced to do exactly what he said to survive. And if they succeeded with the missions he set for them, a snowball effect would happen, and he would be left with willing soldiers. Jiangling wondered if such a plan would truly work, or would they be left in an unwinnable situation with death as their only option. 2 hours later they had reached their destination, and Evelyn Clark knew this was going to be the day she died. How would a bunch of prisoners survive, let alone put up a fight, in the fiercest area of the front lines? The group didn't even have reinforcements from the outside world. Zhao's simple answer to her was, if you never take the first step, you're already a failure. Evelyn would rather be a failure and alive than dead any day of the week. Regardless of her feelings about the situation, she shouldn't have any problems accomplishing the tasks that he set for her. As he passed her the map with the locations that he needed her to install the tactical nukes, he realized it was time for the pre-show to begin. The prisoners were done taking orders, and it was time for their liberation. Xiao walked up to them and assured them that the looks in their eyes pleased him. The biggest one among them readied his gun and stepped up to Xiao, determined to put him in his place. He insisted they weren't in the prison anymore, and things were going to change. They had no problems letting Xiao go, but they would be keeping the 2 sweet things over there. Too bad he had chosen the wrong person to look down on. Jiangling disappeared before his eyes, and when she reappeared, her spear had been plunged into his chest. Then she asked Xiao if he objected to her killing just one. He had no objections, but next time she should ask permission instead of forgiveness. She slung the trash off her spear and put on a display so the others knew what they were dealing with. Her lightning show had the intended effect of calming them all down. Xiao explained they had 2 choices. They could either follow his orders or die. For their sakes, he warned them that escaping was not a wise option. They were surrounded on 3 sides by monsters, and on the 4th side was the Federation. And coincidentally at that moment circumstances sealed the deal. A battle took place where the humans were wiped away in an instant. Things had changed. Now they were surrounded on all 4 sides by monsters. This was officially a suicide mission. The group of prisoners whined about their circumstances, which was perfect. They only had one choice, which was to follow his orders and create a miracle which would allow them to see another day. While the prisoners stood there stunned, Xiao went ahead with explaining the operation. 10 people to a group. Each group gets 1 walkie-talkie and 1 military map. Shut off the public channel. Each group is only allowed to report their situation to me and can only follow my orders. Remember, this walkie-talkie is more important than your life. You can die in the fighting, you can be surrounded by monsters, but you must ensure the safety of the walkie-talkie no matter what. Groups A to E, head in the 9 o'clock direction. Groups F to J slowly advance in the 1 o'clock direction. Xiao continued on in this exact manner. He assured that Evelyn was ready to go before they moved on. She let him know that she was a mechanic first and foremost, but she shouldn't have any problems completing such a simple job. With that, the operation started in earnest. Group B reported they had encountered monsters. As they stared on at the monsters ahead, they knew their death was assured. Xiao wasted no time handing out orders. Group B retreat 300 meters to the southwest. Then he commanded Group D to advance 200 meters to the northeast. When they got to their locations, they were to throw their tactical grenades. As soon as they were done throwing their grenades, they were to advance to the northeast, where a group would be waiting for them. They had no idea how he knew the monster's exact location. But since they were all in such a bad situation, they had no choice but to follow his orders. As Group D arrived at their assigned location, there was indeed a mob of monsters waiting for them there. Even though they were surprised, they did as ordered and threw their tactical grenades. When the smoke cleared, the team was nowhere in sight as they had already advanced to their next destination, leaving behind a group of agitated monsters. Xiao ordered Group A to detonate the remote control landmines. Then he ordered Group F to turn and advance 400 meters to the north. Xiao wanted Group C to turn and advance 300 meters to the east. Groups G, H and L were to stand guard on the cliff of C4 and to ready their tactical grenades. Before their very eyes, the plan was coming to fruition. Two groups ran towards each other, each trailed by a legion of angry beasts. The groups turned and headed towards the cliff. The monsters were unaware of the dangers that awaited them. The prisoners were stunned. How was anyone capable of accomplishing such a feat? And with that, his plans to win their trust had succeeded. The prisoners would follow his orders to the end of the earth. The cliff-top group wasted no time raining down hell upon the monsters. And without any casualties, the operation was complete. The prisoners happily returned to the mountaintop as they had successfully completed their induction mission. As soon as the coast was clear, Xiao wasted no time having Jiangling use her power to light up the nukes. The explosion caused the surface of the inactive volcano to rip apart, releasing all the waters that supplied the local hot spring. A wave of death washed from the top of the mountain. But the water released from the hot springs was just the tipping point. The true devastation came as an avalanche was created from the debris of the initial assault. As it swept downhill, more and more monsters were caught up in the flood of death. Zhao's operation was successful, and in one fell swoop he had cleared this part of the front lines. You would think this would be good news for civilization. But seeing how as none of the great generals had anything to do with the attack, it would only bring them great shame. And if news that prisoners were involved in such a miraculous operation got out, their shame would only be doubled. So, the Federation did what the Federation does best. They took credit for the whole operation. No one would ever admit that on that day, a party from the redemption camp outdid the best of the Federation, and reversed the course of the Sea of Monsters. But even though the Federation has told the prisoners limelight, they flew them back to civilization on a giant luxury plane. But instead of seeing reductions in their sentences, for the heroes they had become, they were all tossed back in prison. And our team of professionals were sent off to a new destination far removed from the prison camp. As the news reached the prisoners that the Federation had completely robbed them of their success, the group became rambunctious and upset. But before a riot could break out, the prison guards wasted no time putting them all down. Army Camp A1 Commander-in-Chief lived in a luxury residence on the front lines. Congressman Sung was surprised when the news of unrest in the prison hit his ears. He truly believed the prisoners would be treated as the heroes they were. For them to be treated so well to only be casually wiped out was a devious game indeed. A1's commander-in-chief explained that such bad seeds could not be allowed to return to civilization. If such trash was allowed to return, they would only spread rumors and lies about our successful operations on the front lines. He explained that he would never play such games. That group reacted horribly to the truths they heard on the news and only got what was coming to them. The commander-in-chief didn't expect any problems from the other 3 participants of the incident. He was having them personally watched by his best men. Because of this, he didn't expect such an incident to occur again in the future. They moved on to more pleasing subjects. Rumors had been spreading that the Federation had a great weapon that would change the course of the war. But it turned out that such weapons had already arrived on the front line. Somewhere in an isolated location of the front lines, a group of soldiers prepared for an incoming assault. As they saw the whites and the reds of the monster's eyes, they all stood resolute. But just as the bloodshed was about to start, they were all ordered to retreat to the second line of defense. Before they could argue the absurdity of such an order, the ruling officer explained that this command came from the top. Special troops from Star City would be replacing them immediately. A big bare-footed ogre stepped onto the battlefield. If you're told to scram, little human, you scram. A whole squadron of superjack soldiers were making their way onto the battlefields. The soldiers looked to be heavily modified. If Bane had children, these soldiers would be a dead ringer for them. As soon as their handlers cleared them for battle, they wasted no time getting into the thick of it. They shot up whatever red goo they were on and instantly doubled in size. Now that they were fully jacked, they only had one thing on their mind. They sprinted forward, repeating the mantra, "Kill, kill, kill." And they wasted no time doing just that. The Bane soldiers were literally weapons created in humanity's image. The normal soldiers thought they were all mad. They couldn't tell who exactly were the monsters in this situation. The super soldiers shredded the beast with little effort. They were disappointed they weren't given a true fight. They decided to increase their difficulties by charging into the center of the horde of monsters. This would allow the difficulty to at least be artificially increased, seeing as how they were now being attacked from all sides. The regular soldier was panicking. He begged their handlers to stop their reckless behavior. He believed the Bane soldiers were forcing themselves into a suicide situation. The handler reassured him that they were only expressing their true powers, which they can only achieve by charging headlong into danger. The soldier was stunned. At that moment, he realized that these people from Star City were insane. The lead soldier decided to let his hair hang loose. He peeled the suffocating mask from his face, revealing the half-monster he truly was. At this, the monsters all paused in their attack. As they weren't used to fighting things similar to themselves, the Bane soldier decided to up the ante and perform his second injection. As he pounded his chest, the red serum flowed into his body, causing him to swell in size and become a true monster. He wasted no time crushing the face of the closest monster with his bare hand. The human monster was now fully off his rockers, and destruction was the only thing that would quench his thirst. The double-jack super soldier shot forward, relishing in the destruction he wrought. Under the relentless assault of the super soldiers, the flow of monsters eased within moments, and soon trickled out completely. The soldier was in shock. The squadron of super soldiers had easily forced the sea of monsters to retreat. Their handlers were ecstatic. This batch of experiments far exceeded their expectations. They would soon be able to turn any human into a powerful professional using drugs and surgical modifications alone. The super soldiers marched off the battlefield, leaving a literal sea of destruction behind them. Their leader presented the head of a rare specimen to the scientists. It was not very powerful, but it should be useful. The super soldier requested to be allowed to quench the thirst of his burning heart by heading to the next battlefield. His handler assured him that he had nothing to prove and began a thorough check of his condition. The ground shook and rumbled, catching the attention of everyone present. The monster gods had sent a colossal beast to put the humans in check. There was no way something this big just appeared out of nowhere. Upon closer examination, the creature was an amalgamation of all the dead beings they left behind. The super soldier was thrilled. He would be able to quench his thirst right here, right now. He wasted no time throwing himself at this new adversary. As he came down with his first attack, he was snatched out of the air. The scientists calculated that it was an 8th-ranked monster. He recalculated that it might even be in its 9th rank. He knew that this was bad news for his experiment. He ordered the super soldier not to inject any more red goo. The world wasn't ready for the sight of such an action. The super soldier wasn't interested in dying on this battlefield. He would inject as much as it took to secure his survival. He swore to kill anything that came into his path as he pounded on his chest. The serum flowed into his body, rapidly increasing his size. But the action turned out to be a bad move as the monstrosity's hands refused to yield. Before the eyes of everyone, the super soldier became unrecognizable. Even though he was becoming a very powerful monster, it just wasn't enough. He did his best to force open the monster's hand, but it held tight. Eventually the colossal beast bored of such games. With both hands it crushed the super soldier, showering the battlefield with its tainted blood. The scientist stood there in shock. He could clearly see that this beast took pleasure in its actions. It took no time for the news to reach the ears of the commander-in-chief. But the situation on the battlefield had changed. There wasn't just one colossus beast. There was now a whole legion of them headed directly for Army Camp A1. The commander-in-chief knew exactly what this meant. For such a large number of natural disaster-level mobs to appear meant that a monster god had appeared in their world. Humanity was finally reaping the consequences of tossing the mask out like trash. For a monster god to appear meant that the mask wasn't in the void keeping them in check. Without thinking, the commander-in-chief mentioned the mask in front of one of the very people who condemned him. But the commander needed not worry. All it did was trigger the politician to recite his idiotic essay about how everything could be laid at the feet of the mask. He wasted no time coming up with a plan to get them out of this situation. He wanted to know how many 7th-ranked professionals or higher resided in the camp. The commander wasted no time going down the list. Currently there was close to 40 7th-ranked professionals. There was 15 8th-ranked professionals. And including the 2 of them, there were 6 9th-ranked professionals. The politician who was in charge of overseeing the war efforts insisted that with enough cannon fodder along with the 7th rank and higher professionals, there would be just enough manpower to overcome this disaster. And he reminded the commander-in-chief he was just someone that Star City had dispatched to oversee the fighting. And there was no need to count him as part of the war effort. The commander was stunned by such a declaration. His plan was simple. They would send all the professionals to hold the front line. Then they would clear away the monster problem using multiple nuclear weapons. The commander insisted that such a plan would take their professionals out also. Such action would lead to an unimaginable number of casualties. The psychopath from Star City insisted that the lives of professionals were meaningless in comparison to the preservation of the momentum of the war. And if the nukes worked out, humanity wouldn't have to rely on high-level professionals any longer. Such a plan allowed the cowardice of the commander-in-chief to shine through the gaps in his facade. The politician's plan meant that he wouldn't have to needlessly risk his life on the battlefield. He immediately sent out the order that would essentially doom every professional in Army Camp A1. The foot soldier warned our group of professionals what was headed in their direction. He insisted they retreat to the closest walls. But Jiangling and Xiao casually crested the embankment. Jiangling had never seen such monstrosities in her entire life. All Xiao knew was that he could sense the aura of the monster god, treacherous wisdom. The natural disaster grabbed up a handful of cannon fodder, shaped it into a ball and launched it towards the humans. The soldiers stood there in shock as the makeshift missile hurtled towards them. Upon realizing what was happening, panic ensued. Multiple organic missiles tore into the walls of Army Camp A1. Seeing as how the small missiles weren't doing the job, the Colossus beasts decided to up the ante. 3 of them clustered together, and with all their might, launched one of their own. The huge projectile streaked through the air, ending with a spectacular explosion that left a hole in the wall. The missile, monster, rose up and smashed the human, frozen in place from sheer horror. The blow was so powerful it opened the walls, allowing the small beasts to rush in. The camp's defense wasn't prepared for such an onslaught. The small monsters wasted no time, devouring every human in their path. Xiao and Jiangling relentlessly cut down every monster swarming their location. Jiangling inquired if Xiao had a plan that would reverse the flow of this battle. He insisted he could come up with a plan, but he would need at least an hour to make preparations. The only problem was they didn't have an hour to spare. Jiangling decided that if this was going to be the place she died, it would be a fine death indeed. She forced her lightning element through her staff and dashed forward, slicing through multiple enemies as she slid to a stop on the edge of the wall. Countless beasts lay below, clamoring for their chance to lay waste to the human race. For many years, Jiangling carried hatred in her heart for her father. If it wasn't for him, her mother would still be a part of her life. But instead, his presence has always relentlessly casted her into its shadow. She was cursed with a lightning power so strong she had to wear a mask just to suppress its explosive nature. If she hadn't been given such a precaution, she would have died long ago. Her mentor insisted that by now she should understand her father's actions. But the truth was, whether it was the past, present or future, she could never and would never understand why he decided not to rescue her from the sea of monsters. She guessed it was time for her to pay a visit to hell and asked him that question face to face. As purple lightning arced uncontrollably off her body, she stepped over the edge of the wall. She wasn't committing suicide, she was just finding an easier path to her destruction. She hit the ground, wiping away every monster in her path. As she carved a path straight to the giant colossus before her, she leaped towards its hand, prepared to erase it from existence. But to her shock, nothing happened. It swatted her away like the annoying fly she was. But as she plummeted to her death, Xiao rescued her in mid-fall. Her momentum was so great that the two of them left a crater in the side of the wall. Xiao casually walked away from the impact with her cradled in his arms. As he laid her against the ground, he praised her actions and explained that in her current state, she just wasn't capable of taking out an 8th-ranked monster. As he reached into the void to retrieve Blood Raven, Xiao let Jiangling know he had no plans of dying on this battlefield, and neither should she. And right before her eyes, he initiated his monster form. Xiao stepped towards the colossus, knowing that he was finally going to get the fight he deserved. Jiangling was shocked to see Zhao's true power. He wasted no time fulfilling her original promise to remove the colossus' hand. As the chunks fell to the earth, a second slash deprived it of the use of its forearm. And with the third attack, he cut clean through its shoulder and out the other side. And before its upper body could sleuth away and form a puddle on the ground, Blood Raven absorbed all of it. All the soldiers were in shock that such a monster was eliminated in the blink of an eye. But the true monster stared on in awe. With his very eyes, he had saw a human transform into the real savior of Day City. He never in his life thought he would come across such a magnificent specimen. All he could think about was getting Xiao under a scalpel to progress his human modification experiments. And just like before, the Federation wasted no time launching their nuclear warheads. 35 of the natural disaster-ending devices streaked through the sky. All of the professionals risking their lives realized that they had been sacrificed for the greater good. And the true monster was so corny that he used the line, that their sacrifices would not be in vain. And all of humanity will remember the sacrifices they chose to make this day. A streak of purple cut across the sky. And literally before their very eye, treacherous wisdom appeared. The politician was furious. How was this even possible? In the enduring conflict between humans and monsters, humans have gradually discerned certain truths. There exists a delicate balance between the unknown void and the earth, the realm of human existence. Like small shrimps, lesser monsters can descend upon Earth through this intricate net. Similarly, calamity-level monsters, akin to small fish, have the capability to breach this barrier. However, the demon gods stand as bloodthirsty great white sharks, colossal in size, unable to breach the net. It is precisely this understanding of the net, and the impossibility for the demon gods to breach it, that has led most high-ranking officials of the Federation to advocate for peace. Among them, the peace faction prevails while the Mask and his minority war faction hold a contrasting perspective. The Mask staunchly believes that only one side can exist between humans and monsters, leaving no room for compromise. The survival of the human race necessitates the complete eradication of the demon gods, regardless of the cost. This warlike ideology, however, has gradually alienated the Mask, resulting in a loss of support among the high-ranking officials. It stands as one of the significant reasons contributing to his ultimate downfall. The monster god Treacherous Wisdom wasted no time eliminating the nukes one after the other. He sent each one into the void with little to no effort. The politician was shocked and instantly turned around to retreat from the battlefield. While the commander-in-chief stood there, frozen in place, not able to summon the will to even control his own body. The commander-in-chief glanced back at the politician, asking him where exactly was he rushing off to. And his simple response was things had spiraled out of control and he was needed back in Star City. Put simply, he was running away with his tail between his legs. But the commander-in-chief, being the coward that he was, insisted that no one knew better what happened on this battlefront than he did, leading to both cowards attempting to escape their imminent demise. All of the professionals stared on as the beasts rejoiced in the arrival of their master. As they stood there, rejoicing with all their might, Xiao did not waste the opportunity. He proceeded to slice open each of the colossus. But one caught him off guard and sent him flying on a trajectory straight for the earth. Xiao laid in the rubble as half his monster face peeled away, revealing the human underneath. As the monster god Treacherous Wisdom stared down upon his form, what Jiangling saw didn't make any sense. Jiangling had seen Xiao transform into the humanoid monster. But with her excellent deduction skills, she pieced together that the only way a monster god would care about a single human was if that human happened to be. Xiao was none other than the mask. Xiao and the monster god stared each other down. Eventually, fear radiated through every part of Treacherous Wisdom, and he immediately retreated from the battlefield. As he hastily departed, the colossuses simply ceased to exist, causing all of the smaller monsters to retreat as well, leaving a scarred battlefield in their wake. The professionals that escaped their imminent demise by a sliver cheered from the top of the walls of Army Camp A1. All Xiao knew was that Treacherous Wisdom was still the same coward he always was. In my past life, upon entering the void inhabited by the monstrous gods, Treacherous Wisdom would cower and conceal itself, refusing to confront me directly. It dared not even reveal a glimpse of its tail. However, the moment I renounced my identity as the mask and relinquished all my power, Treacherous Wisdom found the audacity to launch an attack. It surprised me to witness its fear-stricken retreat upon seeing me. If it had truly sensed my power even for a fleeting moment, considering its 13th rank, it should have realized that crushing the current version of me would be no more challenging than squashing an ant. Path of a Monster. Main objective. Sea of Monsters completed. Rewards partial transformation into a monster god explanation. Starting partial transformation into a monster god will allow you to surpass the earthly limits of 9th ranked professionals, and become a true god in the eyes of humans. Take note. Partial transformation into a monster god requires a large amount of real-world objects to maintain, such as gold bars, precious gems, specially made materials, etc. As the energy of monsters swirled around him, Xiao was filled with immeasurable strength. But with it came the urge to destroy and consume everything. He did his best to suppress all of these cravings. But while he was minding his own business leveling up, Trash decided to grace him with its presence. The corrupt politician, the commander-in-chief, and also the supreme commander stood before him, along with the secret police. Jiangling knew what was coming and came to Zhao's rescue, even though I highly doubt he needs it. She explained exactly who he was and that he was a professional in her party, that he was a human and not a monster. But the politician's new hype man, the commander-in-chief, refuted all of her claims. This smooth-tongued politician let the dribble roll out of his mouth. Once a monster, always a monster. Him being disguised as a human doesn't change that. He's most definitely been hiding among humans this whole time. It's not without reason to believe that he's the cause of the Sea of Monsters. When he appeared in Day City, a calamity-level monster also appeared in Day City. As soon as he appeared on the repelling monster front, a sea of monsters instantly fell upon us. I don't see any of this as a coincidence. His hype man was right there to back him up. Are you all crazy? Did you not just see him defend us against those 9th ranked monsters? If he was a monster, he would be attacking us, not them. And not to mention he's the reason why the monster god retreat. The hype man cut her off. He insisted she shut her mouth. How dare she defend the monster? He decided that since she was defending of a monster, she had to be working for the demon gods too. So, he proceeded with the power granted to him as the commander-in-chief of the repelling monster front to place both of them under arrest. The secret police surrounded them, weapons at the ready. Xiao was done playing around. He casually launched a soldier into the air. The commander-in-chief launched an attack against Xiao. Energy radiated from his hand covered in a pair of metal knuckles. Xiao blocked his attack with Blood Raven. And at their simple contact, the commander knew he was in trouble. Luckily, the politician took this opportunity to put Xiao in a headlock. Fully covered in his green aura, he felt he was unstoppable. Xiao broke his grip and slung him over his shoulder, immediately piercing him through the chest with Blood Raven. As his arterial blood scattered across the ground, Xiao turned his attention to the commander-in-chief. The coward-in-chief tried to escape, ordering his underlings to throw away their life. Blood Raven surrounded him on all sides. Zhao's mere presence frightened him to his core. He shouted that Xiao was a traitor, and what did he truly believe he was going to accomplish? Since you believe me to be a monster, I might as well act the part. Xiao proceeded to slash him through, leaving nothing but a blood stain in his wake. The Supreme Commander shot forward, taking a knee before Xiao. Army Chief, I apologize for not helping you take out that trash. The Supreme Commander proceeded to explain that while his eyes were not in the best shape, his sense of smell and hearing are very sensitive. Because of that, his perception level is very high, so he knew Zhao's identity from the very start. How could he of all people ever mistake the identity of the mask? Your true followers have been waiting for your return. We will march upon Star City and slaughter any congressman that stands in our way. We will take control of everything that rightfully should have belonged to you. Armies across the world will pledge allegiance to your name. I doubt you understand the countless number of souls that have always been on your side. In the past, you shrugged off the mantle of power that belonged to you. But I believe you've changed and will step up and lead us to victory. Not just against the human trash, but the demon gods themselves. As the Supreme Commander looked down, Xiao blasted into the air, retreating from the situation. Through the united efforts of the repelling monster front, with the invaluable support of troops from Star City, the Federation has achieved an extraordinary victory on the front lines of the human-monster conflict. In this epic battle, we obliterated millions of demons, including a remarkable feat of eliminating 6 7th rank, 25 8th rank, and 12 9th rank demons during the decisive encounter at Army Camp A1. While the Federation did bear the weight of casualties in this grueling struggle against the sea of monsters, the significance of these sacrifices becomes apparent when one considers the resplendent outcome of this battle. It is through these selfless sacrifices that the human race has been persevered, paving the way for the glorious situation we find ourselves in today. However, amidst the vastness of this conflict, an unprecedented occurrence emerged. Traitors and turncoats infiltrated our ranks, sabotaging our efforts from within, resulting in substantial losses for the monster-repelling front. Faced with the monstrous threat, certain individuals willingly betrayed their own kind to secure their wretched lives. They turned their weapons against their fellow humans, inflicting unnecessary death and injury upon the unprepared and unsuspecting. Ramblings spread amongst the crowd. They had no idea monsters could disguise themselves as humans. They wonder how many were out there. The president of the Federation silenced them, and paraphrased his previous speech. Amidst this glorious battle, a vanguard of brave warriors emerged, selflessly sacrificing their lives in the name of humanity's survival. Among them, a disheartening revelation unfolded as we uncovered individuals whose alliances were tied to the very monsters we fought against, a treacherous act of infiltration orchestrated by the enemy. However, amidst this complex situation, a small faction of humans willingly aligned themselves with the monsters, acting as their loyal lapdogs. Rest assured, we are resolute in our determination to expose these traitors and bring them to justice through fair trials and rightful verdicts. The Federation remains steadfast in its commitment to uphold truth and integrity, ensuring that no false accusations tarnish the process. Not a single criminal will be allowed to evade accountability, as we stand firm in our pursuit of justice. As the crowd cheered, the news reporter noticed an individual standing on the building nearby. They scanned towards Xiao, waiting for his presence to be discovered. The civilians in the crowd panicked and began to scatter in all directions. The foolish secret police attacked. This was their turf, Star City. Xiao countered each of their attacks, avoiding killing a single soul. As they continued to attack him, he slowly approached the stage. The Federation president, consumed by paranoia, instantly recognized that familiar silhouette. It was unmistakable. This figure belonged to Xiao Qiu, a person he knew all too well. In the past, they had fought side by side, as comrades and friends. Yet, they had also stood on opposing sides when Xiao Qiu faced impeachment. The president couldn't help but wonder how Xiao Qiu viewed him now. Did he see him with the same disdain? After all, how could the current version of himself compare to the revered mask? Xiao Qiu was the embodiment of a hero, loved and respected by all. However, circumstances presented an opportunity for the president to prove his worth before the entire world. With the newly developed medication that could transform a person into a monster, he could attain the same power. He believed that he could become his equal, matching him in strength and prowess. But when the chance presented itself, he froze before the presence of Xiao. Even as Xiao passed by him, not recognizing him in the slightest, fear froze him in place. He dropped to the ground, defeated, looking like a total loser as Xiao stepped up to the podium. 3 simple words slipped from his lips. "I am Mask." The crowd speculated and wondered how their hero had become a monster. He made it clear that his return wasn't to assume the role of a celebrated hero. The truth had been revealed. Humanity never truly required a hero. There was a single essential element that humanity desperately needed, and that element was Xiao himself. Regardless of whether he was referred to as the Mask or any other name, he asserted that only he possessed the ability to guide them out of their despair, out of the abyss they found themselves in. The foolish actions and choices they had displayed during this period would only lead them to their untimely demise. It wasn't a matter of his personal necessity, but rather the undeniable truth that all of them needed him. Only he stood as the beacon of hope and salvation that could pull them out of their current predicament. The crowd was shocked. The Mask had always let them walk over him. How could he say such things? He was always humble and a man of few words. However, in the current state of affairs, it has become evident that an excessive accumulation of power instills fear within all of you. This fear has driven you to cast me aside and exile me from your midst. It is crucial to understand that weakness has never been a sin, but rather, it is pride that holds that distinction. Hence, this time, I have returned with the purpose of depleting your resources in order to augment my own power. I make this declaration to the entire world, for from this day onward, the dominion of this entire planet shall belong to me. In Jiangling's eyes, all her loose ends have finally been tied up. She truly understood the words of her mentor now. The sad, pathetic excuse for humans wasted no time getting behind their new ruler. They shouted nonsense like "May he live for 10,000 years" over and over as they bowed to his presence. "All you see before you belongs to me. I dare anyone to try to take it." And that concludes this part of this magnificent story.